Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to the pre-season shakedown for Split B's SimRacing International Thursday GT3 Championship Season 13 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, it's only a few days to go. In fact, by the time you're watching this broadcast, it is only 24 hours to go until we do raise the curtain on our formal Season 13. But in preparation for each and every season of racing on Thursdays in the SimRacing International GT3 Championship, we do of course hold our pre-season event. On this event, there's only bragging rights up for grabs and also gauge a pace, but this is also a brilliant opportunity for our drivers to try and get a feel for exactly where their pace lies in relation to their rivals and how they feel in the car they may be bringing to the grid. No cars have been locked in as yet, so they'll be locked in as of the first round when they do turn up to the grid in only what is a limited period of time away. But therefore, it means for us, it's a great opportunity to get ourselves up to speed with the season ahead and get to see who exactly could be looking to be quite impressive as the drivers make their way out of the circuit today in preparation for round number 1. This broadcast, of course, being brought to you as if it were live. The pre-season event for the GT3 Championship occurring on Thursday, the 25th of June 2026. We're bringing it to you as if it were live today, as of this Wednesday, the 1st of July. Indeed, a little bit later than we normally would, and we do apologise for that. That's all down to scheduling and availability. But we promised you we'd make sure we brought a broadcast for each and every round, including the pre-season and the racing, and we're definitely going to do it. And that's why we're here today, to make sure we don't let Split B go unnoticed. This broadcast is recorded, and therefore, as it premieres at YouTube, unfortunately, we can't interact with you if you are in the YouTube chat, but hello to you there from what is a past self for me. But as we welcome you to this broadcast, we are catching all the racing action in the way in place you can catch all the racing action on a weekly basis at SimRacing International. There's on our official YouTube channel, SimRacing International or SRI. Just search for that and you'll be absolutely set for what is plenty of racing, whether it be our Thursday GT3 Championship or other series are ongoing as 2026 continues its way throughout another calendar year. In the content booth, you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh and I shall be your host and commentator for Split B this season. Indeed, I'm very happy to be back, and a huge thank you to the SimRacing International administration team for giving me the opportunity to come back once again, and I'm very happy to be back behind the booth before what is Split B. Indeed, it's been great covering other splits over the last couple of seasons, but indeed, I'm very happy to be back for our Premier and Club drivers. And of course, with this being an all-new season, there are plenty of rules and regulation changes, and immediately when you do hear the word Split B, well, surely that means we have reverted back to our Split A and Split B format, away from our Superstars and Masters, and we've done exactly that. But we'll come all into that very shortly. Where exactly are we then for this pre-season shakedown event? Well, the best part of 20 of our drivers for Split B have made the way to Japan for none other than the Motegi circuit. Known in full previously as the Twin Ring Motegi and known currently as the Mobility Resort Motegi, well, regardless of the name change, it is a lesser known Japanese circuit and arguably a highly underestimated one. At 2.98 miles in length, the circuit was originally opened by the Honda Motor Company as a means of trying to help the company in 1997 better understand American open wheel racing, particularly at the time then known as kart, and now known in the modern era as IndyCar. Well, this circuit has gone on to grow a cult popularity when it comes to the fact, whether it be at the club, the national or the international level, it is a very unique circuit for its length. At just shy of 3 miles, it doesn't sound that extraordinary, and when you consider there's only a grand total of 14 corners, you would think, so what's up exactly? Well, it's the fact that this circuit is an array of stop-start features. For every pair of corners, there's a long straight that connects that pair to the next pair, and therefore it's normally heavy braking zones, long straights, and it really is going to be heavy on both brakes and tyres, and for our drivers, they'll never feel as though they've quite got into a rhythm until they've mastered a lap around here, and that's going to be the challenge, and that's why it's going to be a good test of consistency, and also for our drivers here today, it'll be a good test of whether they're comfortable in the car they've brought to the circuit. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, rather than continue to wax lyrical, let's bring you up to speed with the season ahead, including our calendar, the rules and regulation changes, and then we'll take a look at the remainder of the time in the qualifying session that's currently getting underway. So without further ado, to the calendar we go. And as we can see, there is our finalised calendar for Season 13. An absolutely brilliant calendar, no doubt about it. And well, we open up here today at the Mobility Resort Motegi. We start in Japan and we'll end in Japan, as you'll see later down the calendar. But at first, we've got to make our way to round number 1. And that will be on the 2nd of July. And that'll be at the Watkins Glen International Circuit. That'll be the best part of what will be a 90-minute race to open up the season. And we do have a change of formats this season. This is one of the big changes straight away. Whereby in previous seasons, many of you may remember, of course, we had our feature race rounds of 60-minute race rounds, and we've also had our sprint rounds of 2 30-minute races. We decided to retire the sprint race format for now, and instead we have shortened practice, we've shortened qualifying, both down from 45 minutes apiece now to 30 minutes apiece, and that opens up the opportunity for us to be able to hold endurance races, 90 minutes in duration, by essentially the 2 sets of 15 minutes that we do claim back from those practice and qualifying sessions. And well, we'll see the first of our 3 endurance race rounds for this season as of round number 1 at Watkins Glen, now being the US state of New York. Then we'll be seeing our way over to Australia for round number 2 on the 9th of July, and that'll be at the Mount Panorama circuit, but we all normally refer to it as Bathurst in reference to the local city of Central Tablelands. And then we will be seeing in round number 3, we make our way to Belgium for Spa-Francorchamps, indeed the venerable Ardennes Forest Belgian circuit. Then we'll be going all the way back to US of A for the Virginia International Raceway on the 23rd of July. That'll be for round number 4. And then we will be seeing in round number 5 what will be the conclusion of the first half of the season. It'll be the 30th of July, and it'll be the second of our endurance race rounds at Road America. Indeed, we'll be staying in the US for back-to-back rounds, but then making our way to Germany to kick off the second half of the season. No mid-season break, of course, as always, and it'll be mixed weather conditions. One of the 3 mixed weather condition rounds, the other one being, of course, at Bathurst in round number 2, and one a bit later on, but it'll be mixed weather at the Hockenheimring Baden-Württemberg in Germany, and that'll be on the 6th of August. For the 6th round on the 6th day of the 8th month of the year, we'll then go to the 13th day of August for what will be Le Mans. And whilst it will not necessarily be 24 hours of racing there, we definitely made sure to reserve the right to hold our 3rd endurance race round at Le Mans, and that's where it'll be in France. And then for round number 8, we make our way to the Daytona International Speedway, another staple of 24-hour endurance racing with the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona each and every year. And the 20th of August, it will be the inaugural night race for the Thursday GT3 Championship, much requested by drivers to have a night race, and we've listened and we heard them, and we'll be making sure under the floodlights in the US state of Florida, our drivers will be doing battle there for a 60-minute race. Then our penultimate round, we make our way to Austria for the Red Bull Rings Grand Prix circuit, and indeed it'll be a 1-hour race there under mixed conditions. And from the 27th of August to the 3rd of September, the tension will be tight as the drivers will then make the way back to Japan, where we start this season, this pre-season event, but rather than being in the Takigi Prefecture, we'll be in the Mie Prefecture, and it'll be another Honda-owned circuit, intriguingly, and we will be at the Suzuka International Racing Courses Grand Prix circuit to bring the curtain down. Much like in the 90s Formula 1 fashion, it'll be where we crown our champions with the sun setting, and it will be sunsetting on the season. So an incredible calendar awaits us. The majority of this calendar, of course, being based on the iRacing officials, but we have taken the right of SimRacing International to swap out some circuits and change up the order as needed in order to be able to create a conducive and very fair league racing format calendar where there's a little bit for everyone with regards to these circuits. And we've got power circuits out there such as Road America and Bathurst. We've got handling circuits such as the Hockenheimring, and we've definitely got in-betweeners such as the Red Bull Ring and also Suzuka. There's something for everyone, and it's going to be great to see all the GT3 machines out there. But of course, the big changes for this calendar beyond the host circuits is the fact we now have the replacement of the sprint race rounds with endurance race rounds, and also we do have those 3 mixed conditions rounds. Mixed conditions back once again, but indeed quite the mixture of mixed conditions, it must be said. But of course, that is the calendar of which both our splits are going racing. There's no difference in the calendar and the race formats, whether the split A or split B. Well, what about the prizes that our drivers are competing for? Well, here are our prizes. There are 40 personalised driver trophies to be won, and therefore we do have 5 available for the top 5 in each of our 4 driver classes. Split A, of course, will consist of the Elite and the Pro classes, the Elites being the best of the best, the drivers who really are at the top end of esports racing. Indeed, if you think you're fast enough, go to Elite and see if you improve yourself. It'll be the top prize out there, no doubt about it. Then we have our Pros, the second of our classes. Those are drivers who spend a lot of time behind the wheel and definitely are pushing towards Elite status and are just a couple of attempts behind becoming Elite and looking to hone their craft. But if you stay with us here in Split B for this season, well, you'll be in the company of the Premier and the Club drivers. The Premier drivers, of course, gradually making their way forward, and at the Premier point of what is the B split, where they found a bit more pace over the Club drivers and one day are looking to become pros, indeed they're rising up through the ranks. And as for our Club drivers, well, it may be drivers who don't have the time to practice necessarily, may not be looking to get that much quicker and are just there to have a bit of fun, but also very friendly and quite a few gentlemanly and ladylike drivers out there. And indeed, that's what Club's all about there. So there's something for everyone, and there's competition for everyone out there, whether you're the fastest, that'll put you in the elite, or whether you're towards the slower end of the spectrum. But either way, you've got some rivals out there, and all of our top 5 drivers in each of those 4 driver classes, they will be taking home personalised driver trophies at the end of the season. So 5 times 4, that makes 20. What about the other 20 trophies, I hear you ask? Well, of course, we do have our Teams Championship, which runs in parallel. Now, as per usual, the Teams Championship runs across both splits, whereby essentially what you do have is the situation in which we will see some teams are entirely within Split A, we'll see some teams entirely within Split B, and some that are a mixture. So therefore, we'll keep you up to date each and every week with how the Teams Championship is progressing as the season goes on, and we will see the top 5 teams, their drivers will receive drivers' trophies, and teams are allowed to be made up of 4 drivers in total. So therefore, 4 times 5, that gives you the other 20 plus 20 gives you 40, and that's how we do get to 40 personalised driver trophies to be won. And these much coveted driver trophies, well, they are the acrylic stand type, and they do include the driver's name, their car livery, and their team logo. Indeed, they're highly personable trophies, and indeed, there's nothing quite like having one of those on your mantelpiece to be able to celebrate the time when you did take a championship crown or a very strong result over the course of a season. And it always makes it worth racing in the SimRacing International GT3 Championship, and indeed all of our series. And we wish all the drivers the best of luck as they pursue their personalised driver trophies. Now, with regards to our race rules for this season, we could read out the entire rule, but we could go the Matt Malone route, although we wouldn't be doing a subathon reading out the iRacing Sport Code in his case. But instead, what we're going to do is just simply focus on the big rule changes of this season. Now, what exactly has changed, I hear you ask? Well, split class assignments, that's the obvious one. We have, after a season experimenting with the Masters and Superstars format, and for those who missed it, in Season 12, what we opted to do was essentially have what was Superstars and Masters, whereby it was 3 driver classes in each one. So the Masters had what was Pro, Inter and Club, the same for the Superstars, but it was the rules and regulations that were different between the 2 splits, where the Masters had a much stricter, much more hardcore feel in terms of the rules and regulations, much lower instant point limit, also very strict with regards to things such as qualifying scrutiny, and therefore it really was a situation whereby, and we'll know faster pairs as well back then, and it did make the Masters really one of those situations whereby you had to be absolutely pinpoint precise. That wasn't for everyone, and of course, but that's why we had the Superstars, which were more aligned to our previous rules and regulation format from Season 11 back in the era Split A and Split B. When we experimented with it, we've taken the feedback on board, and we've decided for now to put the Superstars and the Masters aside and return to what is absolutely loved, and that's the Split A and Split B format. And just to remind you, Elite and Pro will be in Split A, and Split B will be in Premier and Club. And if you're sat there right now thinking, well, I'm tuning into a Split B broadcast, who's exactly doing the Split A broadcast? Will it be broadcasted? The answer is yes. Don't you worry about that. Your Split A broadcast, excluding the pre-season, which I presented live as of last week by the time this broadcast premieres. Well, whilst I did present it back then, due to broadcast and commentator availability, you're going to be in very reliable hands because Joe Glass will be returning to the commentary booth after his time away, and he'll be back there joined by Darragh Thacker once again. Indeed, they will be your partnership who'll be commentating and covering all the Split A races live from circuit side over the course of the season, and you'll have me for Split B. And of course, we need to give a big shout out to Chaz Draycott, standing in for Joe Glass over the course of the last few seasons. We're very grateful to Chaz, and of course, we wish him all the best luck as he's now focusing his time and efforts, of course, on what he's commentating on real life motorsport for the remainder of the summer, as I understand it, and particularly, of course, by the big superstars when it comes to the broadcast and commentary team for the FI European Truck Racing Championship. But all the best of luck to Chaz. But meanwhile, as you do join us and we come back to the rules, we made a bit of a diversion there. Well, of course, Split B, Premier and Club, Split A, Elite and Pro. So, we return to that format. But what else has changed? Car setup-wise, the fuel loads have been restricted back to 70%. We did see, of course, 65% for the Masters, 75% for the Superstars. We've gone back to the middle, and therefore, it'll be a fuel load that all the drivers are very comfortable with, and they'll be used to run it. There is one car change permitted as well. That rule has remained, but you'll notice there in big bold text, there's been a bit of a change to that rule, whereby now we have introduced a championship points penalty of 30 points. So, to put that in layman's terms, after round number 1, or the first round that a driver competes in, that car they compete in is locked in. They have the choice to unlock it, and they can change their car, but if they do so, they can only do it once, and they will lose 30 points in their championship campaign. And bear in mind, of course, a win is worth 100 points, so you do the mathematics, that is 30% of a win. That is a huge points penalty, and that may dissuade some drivers from changing car. And we have seen some behaviour in the last couple of seasons. There's nothing wrong with it, to be fair. It's all part of the rules, where midway through the season, or at certain points, a lot of drivers have gravitated towards particular cars because it has been seen to be the meta car for the remainder of the season, whereas now, with the variety of circuits and also this rule change, it's very likely we're expecting a lot of drivers to pick a car at the start of the season and really focus on that car for the whole season. given the fact that it's that 30-point penalty that dissuades them from making the change. Now, qualifying-wise, the session length is now 30 minutes, as we mentioned earlier on. It's gone down from 45 to 30 minutes. That puts a little bit more pressure on qualifying. It's not as easy to be able to get away with it, particularly if you're having a difficult day on a long circuit. And indeed, the Mobility Resort Motegi circuit we're racing at, with a lap time just being shy of 2 minutes, you do the maths there. That's the best part of around about 14 to 15 laps you can put together. Qualifying scrutiny has been reset to moderate, which is our traditional setup there, so our drivers will be very comfortable with that. But as for the races, the instant point limits have been set to 16 for a drive-through penalty and 26 for a race disqualification. So the big change there really is that from the Superstars, which was 18 and 26, we've now dropped the drive-through penalty down by 2 instant points, and the race disqualification has stayed at 26. This is part of a standardised rule set that now does apply to all SimRacing International Championship Series, and therefore we're making the rules easier to transition to, whether you're racing on Sundays or on Thursdays, as per this series, or racing as part of other championships, such as the GT3 Championship. And we do like to standardise things as much as humanly possible. Indeed, for those who came from the Masters from last season, they'll find the limits of what was none other than, I do believe, my memory serves me correctly, a grand total of 14 instant points for the drive-through and 19 for the disqualification. They'll find that things are just that little bit more lenient. But those are the rule changes, and those rules apply across both our splits. There's no differences in the rules in terms of the splits. Everyone has to race the same set of rules and regulations. But let's talk a little bit about our host circuit then for this pre-season event. It is the Mobility Resort Motegi, the Grand Prix circuit located near the town of Motegi in the Motegi prefecture of Japan. 2.98 miles in length or 4.80 kilometers, depending on your preference for units, but what never changes is the number of quarters. 14 in total, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it. Now, this circuit, of course, all about stop-start, and you can see that as our drivers will run the way in towards turn number 1, the double right apex hairpin to open up the corner of turns 1 and 2. It's about V-shaping the join between the two apexes and empowering your way all the way down towards turns 3 and 4. Whereas turns 1 and 2 are symmetric in nature, turns 3 and 4 are asymmetric. In turn 3 is a very sharp late apex left-hander, followed up by a more gentle apex, turn number 4, where it's all about balancing throttle control. As the drivers then make their way out towards turn number 5, it's into another hairpin, you could say the third hairpin of the circuit, as they make their way underneath the oval bridge, which is where the name Twin Ring Motegi comes from, in the fact it was originally an oval circuit joined together with a Grand Prix circuit. Sadly, the oval no longer available for use as of 2026 is being retired, and I do believe it is being turned into a parking lot. Sadly, oval racing at Motegi will be no longer. But as the drivers make their way underneath the oval for the first time on the lap, they'll come fast through turn number 6 and in towards the uphill chicane. Turn 7 and 8, the left into right sweeping S, before they then make their way into the hairpin of turn number 9. Coming out to there, it's a short sprint in towards the eastern hairpin of turn number 10, which sees our drivers make their way onto the eastern start-finish straight. And as they power their way down the club races circuit straight, they'll make their way into the sharp 90-degree right-hander of turn number 11. The most notable elevation change being the descent from turn 10 in towards 11. But out of there, it'll then be into the double left of turns 12 and 13 and complete a lap through that right-hand kick of 14, and they'll do it all again or see that checker flag. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's make our way back to circuit side and see how our drivers get it on with the best part of 30 minutes left in qualifying. And as all of our drivers make the way around, of course, with regards to this post-round broadcast, we do not know what happens. We do not know who's going to be on pole until the end of qualifying. We do not know the race result. And that's why we always say it's as if it were live, because I can promise you one thing, all the reactions you do here are exactly as if it were live. But as we do see Peter Florian make his way around, it's a great opportunity for us to introduce some new faces. We've got plenty of new faces to the grid here in Split B for this season, and therefore not all of them are here today, understandably, and we'll give them all a fair introduction as they make the ones to grid throughout the season. Hoping to see plenty of them, of course, in what will be a day's time at Watkins Glen. But as we do see Peter Florian make his way onwards, and will the Czechia driver, or Czech Republic, but now renamed to Czechia, I do believe, will Peter Florian make his way around, and he will be competing in the Premier class. And how do you tell the classes in Split B? Well, you look to the timetable on the left-hand side of your screen, or at the bottom with regards to the driver names, and you notice those red stripes against their names, they are your Premier drivers, and those with green stripes, such as Joshua Downing from Type 2 Racing, or they will be your club drivers. We do briefly have a bit of a discontinuity there. We do apologise for that. That's on our end, not on your end, ladies and gentlemen, and that's associated with the replay file we're using. And a huge shout out to Rob Mackay for supplying us with the replay file to be able to bring in this post-round broadcast. But we do every so often will have some discontinuity with the replay file. It does happen on what is internet connections on iRacing. But as Downey makes his way on around, well, let's come back to the man we were introducing first and foremost, and Peter Florian, looking a very quick driver, and his name has covered some sim racing circles that I've been following in the past, all in a positive light, I should clarify. And I do believe he's going to be potentially not a favourite in the Premier class, but he's going to be one of the drivers to watch. He could make himself a favourite early on in the season if he delivers on his pace. But right now, he is almost 6/10 of a James Howarth, who returns once again and looking very rapid in his Ford Mustang that he's returned to. And here is James in the pit lane right now, back once more. And the only car he'll ever competed is the Ford Mustang, and I can't blame him for it, of course. In fact, he absolutely loves that car. But introducing some other fresh faces, we do have the return of DC Motorsport, which is absolutely brilliant to see. The team having missed season 12, they decided to take a bit of a gap season, and well, they are back in full force, and we'll represent some Ross Wheatley here as he makes his way around. One of the many DC drivers you'll see. We've got several of them in Split A and several in Split B, and I do believe in Split A you have got the likes of Jared Love and also Formula 3000 and Formula Vauxhall legend Peter Duke out there. So it'd be absolutely brilliant to see them up there. But of course, in Split B, we do have Ross Wheatley as one of their drivers. And Ross, quite a rapid driver as well, has got a lot of potential, I've been informed, and we look forward to seeing how much he can maximise that potential as the season goes on, as he joins the Premier class. We also do have Connor Pink, although taking a bit of a slow run there underneath the second part of the oval that he passed under. And, well, there, lovely livery on the car, it must be said. He's also in a McLaren 720S Evo, and I haven't had too much of an opportunity to get too much information on Connor in the build-up to this pre-season event, but I can tell you one thing, he's looking quite quick out at the moment in 7th place, a second off the pole time, but indeed, qualifying is only a lap. The race is 60 minutes, and therefore that's a bit of a difference. But as he makes his way on around, well, we have got a couple of other Premier drivers out there, although many of them familiar faces, such as, for example, Barry Wenman, and we see him here back once again for Dexterous Motorsports, and here's McLaren. McLaren, a very popular car, as always, has a mixture of characteristics. We also do have the return in Premier here today of Robin Aston, who we do see gradually make his way up the hill through turn 7 and 8 in the Porsche for 5M Racing. A new team for Robin this season. And you can see the 5M outfit out there. And I do believe it's the first time that 5M Racing have competed in the Thursday GT3 Championship at SimRacing International. And we wish them, including Robin, all the best luck on their debut season. As he makes his way on through, well, meanwhile, let's come to the club class and introduce some fresh faces. One of whom, as he makes his way into pit lane through the snaky pit lane, and, well, having a bit of difficulty with his connection, but it finally stabilises. It is none other than Joshua Downing for Type 2 Racing, and well, good to see him out there as he makes his way towards the pit lane. And Type 2, a very potent team to be fair. Indeed, they have some big names out there. Joshua, to be fair, is a relatively big name as he crawls to his pit box, and well, he's got a lot of promise. He's looking very quick in club at the moment as he makes his debut for this season. We also do have Ross Gillette as he makes his way on around, and well, as he makes his way on through, I wonder if he is going to advise me afterwards, and I openly will say this, if I do end up butchering any names, if there's anything wrong in this broadcast, ladies and gentlemen, don't be shy, feel free to give us a shout. Obviously, if you throw something into the chat right now, we're not going to see it because this is a recorded broadcast, but of course, do pop some remarks in the chat or indeed in the comments on this video, and we'll do let us know. But I don't want to say it's Gillette, I think it is Gillette for Ross, but either way, well, how could we forget a lovely BMW livery like that, the BMW M4 Evo, as he makes his way out to turn number 5. And the Welshman in the 281, well, he's definitely looking quite quick as he rolls his way between the corners, and he's in a car that definitely many have struggled to tame over the last couple of seasons since the Evo model arrived on iRacing, but we look forward to seeing him tame it because it is one of those cars that's got a lot of potential if you can find out its inner workings. We also do have, and this is a face you'll be familiar with, but not in the Thursday GT3 Championship, you'll know him from the Friday GTE Championship for Rano Esports, it's Mikhail Salkuni, who's decided to make his way over. He raced in Season 2 of the GT Championship in the club class, and I do believe he may be returning to the grid for the Endurance edition of the GT Championship Season 3, which is due to start in a month's time. Approximately a month, in fact, I think it's 4 weeks now, and Mikhail Salkuni makes way, but it's not just him, Verano Esports, you'll see here in the club class. You'll also see Marcus Clayton make his way around. Bit of a different livery there, but I do believe he may not be quite finalised on the car he's running, and that's why he's not running Verano Esports colours. He's running what is the Bilstein Sport colours, and I do believe those are the colours that were attributed, of course, to what was the car run by, I like to refer to it as the YouTuber car in the recent ADAC 24 Hours of Nürburgring, or at least last year, and that was the car run by Steve Alvarez-Brown, Jimmy Broadbent, Misha Chaldurin, and I cannot for the life of me remember the fourth driver's name, and I do apologise, that's very rude of me. And Wells Clayton makes his way down here, also was in the GT Season 2 club class, did quite well to be fair, ended his season on some rather positive results, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do in a GT3 machine. But we also do welcome to the grid Ben Wayne, who we have recently welcomed as well to the Sunday GT3 Championship. And indeed, Ben's coming out in full force for this season, and he's part of the 5M racing outfit, racing in the club class. And well, he looked quite quick on Sunday, to be fair to him. I suspect he's going to be quite quick here today. And well, currently sat in at 5th place of your well, it's club drivers. Now, for those of you who are sat there and thinking, well, back in my day, we used to refer to the club class as the Evo class. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. We have decided to change the name of the Evo class to club, and that is purely to align it with the nomenclature we use for our classes in other series. But of course, club, Evo, they are interchangeable, and well, the club class is now what Evo has been renamed to. So if you're sat there thinking, where's the Evo class? This isn't the true Season 11 experience. Well, that's why, because we have renamed Evo. But as Wayne makes his way onwards, well, he's trying to evolve his lap time. As meanwhile, we've seen an improved lap there from Mikel Salcuni at 51.170, and that puts him to third in club, 9th overall. Still got a bit more time to find potentially, but getting there gradually as we're getting towards the end of this qualifying session. Do we have any other new faces in the club class to talk about? Well, we do have the return of Quatermass Motorsport, and in particular here, Simon Hunt. He's back once again. Good to see him on the grid. Indeed, Simon, a very friendly face. All the Quatermass Motorsport drivers, to be fair, a very friendly bunch. And well, Andy Chell, one of the big names there, but don't forget Simon, and he's in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, a car which he definitely enjoys, and the team have enjoyed this Aston Martin more than some of the other cars out there. Of course, Andy, the last time we saw him racing on one of our GT3 grids, I believe he was in the Corvette, and that wasn't because he wanted to be in the Corvette. It was a car in the end that the team settled on, and he decided to drive it to see if he could learn it. But back once again, and Hunt in an Aston Martin. We'll have to wait and see whether he locks into that choice, because it has been a car the team have been quite good with in previous seasons. But we also do have out there, in terms of other club drivers, Gavin Corby. He returns to the grid once again. In fact, I think he has taken a bit of a breather over the last couple of seasons, but he's back now, and we'll be seeing Gavin out there in the Lamborghini Huracan of all the machines. Well, an interesting choice there, no doubt about it. The Lamborghini, one of those cars whereby it's much like the Audi R8 Evo 2. It's got the same engine, the same 5.2 litre V10 engine in the back, made by Audi, albeit the latest GT3 offering from Lamborghini that's coming up will soon be departing from the Audi formula. Indeed, the Huracan will not be racing for much longer. I do believe they're going to the Tremiario, or I can't quite remember the exact name of it, so I apologise there for any Lamborghini enthusiasts if I've butchered that, and indeed that has been like chalk scratching on the board to your ears. But as we do see Danny Weir making his way on through, he's back once again. Good to see him returning to the grid, and we look forward to what Danny's going to be able to do over the course of this season. But keeping in mind, of course, these classes you see here today are provisional. They are still being finalised, and well, they will be finalised going into round number 1 tomorrow. So therefore, just take them with a pinch of salt. If you do see a club driver suddenly really outperform a Premier driver, it could change by the time we do get to Watkins Glen. All the classes are being deeply analysed by a team of 6 individuals in the SimRacing International administration team. They've really had to call in a lot of help this time, and well, we do the class of science based on previous seasons, on data of drivers in their officials, also in other leagues where we can get the data available, and indeed a lot of work goes in, but there's always those drivers who sit on boundaries, and those are the hardest ones to evaluate. Now, as we do see Danny Weir making his way on out, have we got anybody else we should reintroduce? Well, we should reintroduce none other than what is Blue Sky Esports' Rachel Hugh. Stuart Rice, unfortunately, her teammate could not make this pre-season event, but we've got Rachel here today, and well, Stuart was a bit disappointed not to be able to join Rachel on the grid here, because he does love the Motegi circuit. There were quite a few drivers who went Motegi, never heard of it, never driven it, and probably won't be driving it for pre-season. And there was a quieter audience, definitely said they absolutely love this circuit, and they're gutted that it's not actually a points-paying round. And just to reiterate, there are no points to turn up to the pre-season event. This is purely on as an optional event where drivers are able to get into a bit of a race format and potentially get a gauge of where they are in relation to some of their rivals. But remember, of course, the car choices may not be final at this point from a lot of drivers. So therefore, you have to take everything you see with a bit of question mark underlining it, because it could all change. Also not able to make this event was Mark De Vries with technical issues with his steering wheel. He's been hoping to fix them ahead of round 1, and we hope he's able to get them fixed. As meanwhile, Gavin Corbin there having a bit of a moment coming out to turn number 4, and well, turn number 4 not an easy corner, but what better way to talk about a lap of the circuit than jump aboard with your provisional pole sitter at this time. It's James Howarth who takes us round for a lap. So made his way in towards turn 1, breaking out the 150 metre board. Trail break it off into second gear, and now back on the throttle gently at first, then feed the throttle in as he makes way out of turn number 2, having to battle with power oversteer as he now makes way in towards turn number 3. Looking to his right hand side for his brake marker, and as he does so, braking out the 70 metre board, coming all the way down to second gear, nice and tight at turn number 3, and then letting the car run out wide, and then open up turn number 4 as much as possible, and now flat out as he makes his way up towards turn number 5. Getting ready for the next hairpin, looks to his left-hand side for his brake marker. Will be the 100 metre board, he goes onto the anchors, coming all the way down the gearbox, trail brake into a late apex, second gear there out of 5, now under the oval he goes, as he makes his way flat out through turn number 6. It's time for the middle sector, and this is where the lap slightly opens up for a brief period as he gets ready for the uphill S's, and onto the brakes at the start of the entry curve in towards turn number 7. Mounts the curve there in 3rd gear, and now into the right-hander. Will he drop to 2nd here? Yes, he will. He'll use the lower gear there to get the power out the corner, and now bring it over to the right immediately to set up turn number 9. As quick as you accelerate, you brake into turn 9. You really need to go for the latest possible apex there. That is a test of how good you are at your trail brake, now light you are on your right foot, as he now makes his way up towards turn number 10. And as he comes on to the brakes here, all the way down the gearbox to 1st gear at this hairpin, a very tight hairpin, and now flat out down the back stretch. As he makes his way down towards turn 11, you can see the road gradually sloping away from here. You really are driving into a bit of a void, and then suddenly you can see what's ahead of you as he looks to his left-hand side for his brake marker. It will be that 100-metre board, braking about 120 metres from corner apex, down to 2nd gear, clatters the curb, drops the car off the corner, now under the oval, open up turn 12 as much as possible, and then to 13, 14 here. On the brakes of 13, and just gently off the brakes, tap the throttle to settle the rear of the car down, and then back on the power immediately as you clear 14 to do the lap, all the way to the finish line. A lovely lap there for James Howarth. What's it going to be this time? Is it an improved lap? And the answer is going to be to that question, sadly not. And in fact, I do believe he invalidated it by running slightly wide coming out to turn number 3. But Howarth currently holds the pole time there of 49.915 as Peter Florian has improved to none other than what is a 1 minute 50.06. That's happened off camera. And we have just had Mikhail Salkuni improve to get within 2 tenths of Josh Downing. Very impressive into his qualifying session. But the clock says 0. And that means we're now into overtime. And well, Mikhail Salkuni making a bit of a ham sandwich of turns 3 into 4. Getting that into a bit of a messy state. As meanwhile, Rachel Hugh trying to improve. And Rachel has gone purple in subsector 1. So that would be the run of turns 1 and 2. So Rachel's got a lot of pace there. And this Corvette will be a very interesting choice for anybody who takes it. Because as we've been hearing from several drivers over the last couple of seasons since its introduction, the Corvette is a car that is very difficult to master. It has a lot of hidden gimmicks to it, and therefore, if you can master those gimmicks, you can find a lot of pace. The biggest one of them all is its torque. The deployment of power to the rear wheels is very interesting in the fact you've got a lot more torque and the lower RPM band compared to other cars for a naturally aspirated 5.5 litre V8 engine. And what it means is you can hold a higher gear on corner exit, whereas a lot of drivers may be using 2nd gear out of some corners. The Corvette could get away with 3rd, and if so, that can really help with tyre degradation on a longer stint. But as the driver's cooling down, the only driver out there at the moment on a valid lap with Salkuni heading to the grass is James Howarth. He's going to be the last driver to put a qualifying lap together here today for this pre-season event. And what will he do? Does he find a bit more time on his previous best? And the fastest lap that's been set here. No laps being set by Peter Armstrong and Eddie Fearbold, we should point out. Peter Armstrong returning to the grid in the club class. I think the last time we saw him was racing in what was about 3 seasons ago, unless my memory does not serve me correctly. But it's good to see Peter back. He'll be in a Lamborghini. Eddie Fearbold back once again. But meanwhile, Howarth heads towards the line. And in the end, is it going to be improvement? No, it's a 50.107. Not too far for his best, to be fair. James really does have that Mustang absolutely locked in. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, that is qualifying complete here at the Mobility Resort Motegi. We see the old name there on the wall. That gives you an idea of how long ago this circuit was scanned for iRacing. Approximately the best part of at least 6 years ago, because the name change occurs out of what was the early 2020s. But as we do wait here now to head into the warm-up period, a great qualifying session, no doubt about it. And James Howarth and Ian taking that overall pole position with Peter Florian joining him on that front row. Barry Wimman and Robin Aston will make up your 2nd row of all 4 Premier drivers. Ross Wheatley will be the 5th year Premier drivers before you have Joshua Downing who will start 6th and his number 267, and he will be another new club pole sitter ahead of Mikhail Salkuni. But we will walk you through that grid when we do get to the gridded procedure for the race, because now with qualifying complete we have what is our 5-minute warm-up session, and that's an opportunity for our drivers to have a bit of a breather, and well, of course, it gives us an audience a bit of an opportunity to have a small breather and to get ourselves very comfortable before the main event gets underway. As we do wait for that transition into the warm-up period to occur, won't take too long to be fair. Well, you can see lovely weather here today. A few clouds out there, plenty of sunshine, well, some blue skies to go with it. But the Motegi circuit, indeed Japanese circuits in general, as you go into the summer season, are very interesting circuits for the simple reason of the fact the humidity level really does rise in Japan as you go through spring into the summer. And well, with humidity, it makes it a very uncomfortable circuit to drive at as we now get this warm-up period underway. A few drivers opting to stay in the pit lane. And as we do show you the weather on the right-hand side of your screen, there you can see at the moment we do have an ambient temperature temperature of 20 degrees Celsius or degrees centigrade, and we have a track temperature of 36, humidity almost 60% there with partial cloud. Indeed, that's going to feel very humid, and this circuit's not going to offer much grip. But Japanese circuits in general are known to typically offer less grip compared to many of their international counterparts. The only real exception is out towards what can be circuits such as Willow Springs Raceway and Laguna Seca in the US of A, both in California, and that's because both circuits, well, particularly Willow Springs, located in the midst of a desert, and they have a very sandy and abrasive surface. And Laguna Seca, in the peak of the summer season, of course, all the grass really goes to what is none other than dead grass. It normally loses its green flourish, and more suddenly you do see what is a very brown circuit around. But focusing here on our time in Japan, if you're curious a little bit more about the mobility resort Motegi, it does, of course, have the infamous Gran Turismo Cafe, dedicated to, of course, the racing game. You could say the arcade sim, depending on your classification, and that's always a point of sore debate for many. What is a true sim versus what is an arcade racing game? But the point being, let's not get distracted by that. The fact that many of us will have started our virtual racing careers in Gran Turismo. You may have even found your dream car on Gran Turismo or another simulator and decided to try and pursue it through that. And it's always good to have dreams, no doubt about it. But definitely an interesting circuit, the Mobility Resort Motegi. In terms of international racing, it is an annual host to the likes of Super GT, which is Japan's premier GT racing series, but it does see many a international face make its way to the grid, and there's always the purported rumour, could Max Verstappen be considering one day to make his way onto a Super GT grid after doing some testing at Fuji quite recently. You also do have what is the GT World Challenge Asia, part of the SRO Motorsport package, and also we do have the Super Formula SF machinery that races here. We also do have plenty of national level racing, such as the Japanese F4 Championship, of course part of that being popularised in the Japanese anime Overtake, which definitely a recommended one out there if you're new to anime and you want to get yourself into something that is motorsport related, and indeed it's quite easy to follow, and indeed used in Japan as a major marketing tool, that anime, in order to try and get younger generations of individuals into Formula 4, and I'll tell you one thing, it's not too bad for doing it. But as we do see Barry Wimmer making his way on out, we're not quite sure who of our drivers here, maybe an Otaku, but as they come through, I'll tell you one thing right now, and that is that Barry Wimmer make his way almost with Eddie Fearbold in front of him. And coming to other drivers on the circuit, and the 100 driver here, a very quick driver. But Eddie's a bit of an interesting character out there, because when he's in his prime, he's quite unstoppable when he's at the top of his game. When he's not having a good day, however, it does normally not go his way whatsoever. And we've seen that in the last couple of editions of our GT3 Championships, where Eddie Fearbold, when he wins, he really goes all in. But when it doesn't quite work out, things do seem to just struggle a little bit as he toes back to the pit lane. But in terms of defending champions for this season, or previous champions, because of course technically defending champion doesn't really work when we changed all the class classifications for season 12. Well, you do have some names here that are champions. Barry Wimmer being an example of a driver who did very well in the previous season, and back once again taking third place in the Masters Interclass and back here in Premier. So he'll be looking to see if he can go a bit further, perhaps finish second in the championship, or even go on to take the win in Split B. Of course, he was third to Nick Stuber, not back for this season as I understand it, and Adam Baker, who is your Masters Inter champion, but he will be in Pro in Split A. Meanwhile, we do have the expectation that we will see Andrew Larkman return to the grid, the Masters Club champion. He'll be returning in Premier for the purposes of this season, although not here today. And we also will be seeing the return of Stuart Racing Club, as we mentioned earlier on, not able to make this pre-season event, but expect him next week. And Rob Mackay is back, and Rob currently parked up in the pit lane. You can see him there parked up in his Mercedes AMG for Dexterous Motorsport Cyan, and he was the third place finisher in Masters Club. He could have taken the championship, many would have reckoned, if he had not had to miss multiple rounds due to being on holiday towards the end of the season, but it doesn't take away from Larkman's achievements nor from Stuart Rice's either. The three of them were very close together, and Rob Mackay tried to do everything he could in the opening 7 rounds to really try to seal the championship before the drop scores then went away to 0 scores for him, because we had 1 drop score. That's back, by the way, for this season, championship points wise. Rounds 1 through to 9, there's 1 drop score available, but the final round is undroppable. That has not changed. As your superstars last season, well, focusing on Sport Superstars Club, we did see Adam Lynch take the title. He will return in Pro, as meanwhile Jack Giles will be back in club for this season, not here today, and Christopher Petty will be returning club as well. That's going to be great to see. And in the Superstars Inter, it was Jared Love, Bobby Moss and Sam Hockley, your top three, although they will be an Elite Pro and Pro respectively. And well, as this warm-up period comes to an end, ladies and gentlemen, we head to the grid for our race. Well, Superstars Pro was Richard Simnor, Milton Tomlinson Dennis and Brandon Dyer, and they will all be back in Elite for this season. But focusing on the here and now, of course, well, warm-up done. It's time to head to the grid for our pre-season race. Who's going to take victory? Let's find out. And as all of our drivers make the way onto the grid here at the Mobility Resort Motegi for Split B's pre-season shakedown in the SimRacing International Thursday GT3 Championship Season 13, this is how our 20 competitors will line up. In his pole position overall and in Premier for James Howarth, the dexterous Motorsport Scion driver, back once again in his Ford Mustang. He'll look to try and pounce away as proudly as he can ahead of Peter Florian, and well, the Czech driver there starts in second, an impressive qualifying lap in his Porsche 992. Barry Wimman starts in third for dexterous Motorsports, and well, he'll be very eager to try and get in amongst the top two. He was 1.5 tenths behind them, and Robin Aston will be starting in full place alongside him for 5M Racing. Then it's going to be Russ Wheatley, the Irishman, for DC Motorsport, representing the team, and well, DC Motorsport bringing a huge package for this season, and he'll be there in his McLaren starting fifth today, head of your club pole sitter of Joshua Downing. And well, Adam Wilson-Ware, I do believe Team Prince will be very pleased to see Josh there on the third row. Can he convert that into the win? We will see. Mikhail Salcuni starts in seventh there, second of the club drivers, looking impressively quick towards the end of the qualifying session, and the Italian may have an ace up his sleeve here, given he was in the end only 2 tenths behind Downing, and in turn he was a tenth faster than Connor Pink, the privateer, who starts in 8th place. Completing your top 10, it's going to be Ross Gillette, the Welshman, ahead of Rachel Hugh for Blue Sky Esports. Rachel getting increasingly quick, to be fair. Rachel's been working very hard between Season 12 and Season 13, and it's paying off. And then we will see outside the top 10, none other than what will be Marcus Clayton for Verano Esports, just ahead of Scott Koshich for GPX Simsport. And with the Scotsman, it will be the Briton of none other than Ben Wayne for 5M Racing starting 13th, head of Danny Weir for Dexterous Motorsport Siam. Martin Brandon starts in 15th place at Axis Simsport, ahead of Rob Mackay, 16th on the grid for Dexterous Motorsport Siam. Then we'll have Simon Hunt starting 17th for Great Mass Motorsport, ahead of Gavin Corby. And it will be Eddie Theobald, the privateer, in 19th place, head of Peter Armstrong for Ghost Squadron Motorsport, joining up with the team that's come back racing regularly in the UK SimRacing GT3 Championship, but they're back with an aim for vengeance, and they'll be looking to go all the way. And Peter today, starting from the back of the field, what can he do from all the way back there in the 245? We will see. But it will be a short formation lap here, ladies and gentlemen. We start on the back stretch, so therefore we've not got long to go before we do go green flag racing. But of course, we don't go straight away. We go when we do get the green flag down the start for this straight. So James Howarth will have to wait for that as he makes way out of the last couple of corners. And it's over to James Howarth to get us underway. And it's lights out, away we go for this pre-season shakedown race as they roll the way in towards turn 1. And as they do, all drivers right now taking it nice and easy on those cold breaks early on. Mikhail Salcuni and Joshua Downing are side by side. Salcuni having a brilliant start there. Downing going a little bit wide as they make their way out the corner, but that will be cold tyres for him. But as they all coming down, James Howarth has ridden out that start. You see the gap he's already opened up to Wenman by the best part of 3 car lengths as they make their way now into that braking zone. But coming on down, everyone now fanning into that braking zone for turn number 3. This is where it gets very tight for the first time. Rob Mackay clearing Eddie Theobald there, getting ahead of Theobald. Oh, could this be? Somebody's on a bit wide there. That's Peter Armstrong, had a great start to 14th place already. In fact, Peter there absolutely flying for Ghost Squadron Motorsport, but now he's going to find that progress may be stymied a little bit. Meanwhile, we see Ross Gillette there having to go a bit defensive versus Connor Pink, and Scott Kostrich trying to make his way on the inside. The GPX Simsport driver from Scotland here, right now definitely trying to buck the Scottish resistance versus his fellow McLaren. Pink is going to be on the outside to inside, getting ready for turn 7. A bit of contact once. Kostrich won't be too happy about that, but I'm sure they'll forgive each other at least for now. He's going to try and go around the outside to inside. Kostrich is not backing out. We briefly lose him to the ether. He comes back, and here's Connor Pink right now, trying to hold that line. Great battle in between them. Oh, who's gone wrong there? That's Ross Wheatley for DC Motorsport. And meanwhile, Scott Kostrich trying to go around the outside of Connor Pink. Does he get it done? No, not quite. Connor Pink goes defensive. Brilliant driving, but there's more behind as Rachel Hugh going 3 wide here with Danny Weir and Ross Wheatley. Wheatley on the outside, Weir in the middle, and Hugh on the inside. Hugh goes all in for it, and she does so. It's a lovely move. 2 for 1 pass, and Rachel Hugh up into 10th place. Not a place gained in the club class specifically, but definitely doing very well right now as Hugh, as she makes her way down towards the next braking zone. But as we do look a bit further back, Danny Weir now on the back there, Ross Wheatley. with Rob Mackay for close company. Mackay looking up the inside. That's bold. That's brave. That's your teammate, Rob, as they make the way through. And right now, the Dexterous Motorsports sign drive here side by side. Well, somebody's going to negotiate this one, but Huiksay is going to let it go. We've had a bit of an incident for Simon Hunt at the back of the field. We're hearing in our ear. We'll come back to that when we can, ladies and gentlemen. But Rob Mackay making a complete palaver there at the final corner, and we can see that poor inside line, and suddenly it's cost him a lot of time. But Joshua Downing on the inside here versus Robin Aston goes all in, goes very deep into the corner to the point he touches the gravel, brings it back on there. That's going to cost him the lead at club as Mikel Salcuni takes it back. But to be fair, he'd already taken the lead back, so the theory would be he will be able to chase Salcuni back down later in the race. Connor Pink there with him as they do make the way on through. We bring the time up in the top centre of your screen as well. Apologies for that being missing. And as they make the way through turns 3 and 4 right now, well, Connor Pink, they're going on the attack as Ross Gillette has a big twitch there. I don't know if you saw that, but the rear end of that BMW completely coming apart. As meanwhile, Carl sideways behind, that's Danny Weir taking a trip wide. Well, he gets that bit wrong, but meanwhile, Ross Gillette under major pressure. And that turn 4, it's such a deceptive corner because essentially you're balancing, when you've got a lot of fuel in the car, you're balancing at 60 to 75% throttle, and there's a specific turning point as well. It is a test of how well you know what a car can do. It can only do 100% of a combination of braking, steering and throttle, and therefore you've got to find that right balance, and that's the problem with turn number 4. Go too far in one direction and you either go straight on or you'll spin the car around or you lose all the pace. But right now Connor Ping is not thinking about that. He's thinking, now can I make a move? Dives up the inside of Gillette there, out breaks himself in towards turn number 9, although aided by Connor Pink looking up the inside, and now Koshic's trying to go around the outside here. The Welshman defending right now. He's not giving up here, and well, as he tries to release his inner dragon, it's not going to work out at the moment because Košić is there or thereabouts. The Scotsman not in the strongest of connectivity at the moment, but they're all negotiating it. Mikel Salcuni under pressure here to try and clear Robin Aston. Joshua down in the same. Robin Aston lets that go. Meanwhile, Rachel Hugh here tries to make it 3 wide into turn 11. That's not a place you go 3 wide, even in club level MX5 racing in Japan at this corner, for the simple reason it tapers off very aggressively. The outside line is the optimum line at turn number 11. It's a weird corner because it is off camber at entry and very quickly evolves to being cambered at the apex. But as they make the way down the hill in towards the next corner, a slight 1 metre elevation drop here from the exit of turn 14's rise in towards turn number 1. Well, right now Rachel Hugh looking for another move on Gillette. Can she find it? The answer is no, but she's getting very aggressive here as we ride on board with the Blue Sky Esports driver. Now making the way out to the corner, the 244 driver definitely very enthusiastic to try and make a move happen here, try and make some magic, but not too easy to find it right now. But hold the phone on that, because that's Joshua down in there, and well, using all the road, plus also a little bit of his brake pedal. He had to stop the car at some point and takes the lead back in club. As meanwhile, Connor Pink runs a bit wide. See Hugh in the rear of the picture there, chasing after Ross Gillette, and further back, Danny Weir. Oh, that's a little bit rough and tumble there, as the Dexterous Motorsport Cyan driver goes on the attack and has a little bit of a bump there as they make the way onwards. But as he does so, well, he'll try and come back to that fight later on, and let's Ben Wayne take the place back, knowing that that contact there would have been on his what would be plate if it would have been the situation where it caused any problems to Wayne. But meanwhile, Clayton and Eddie Fearbold together, and the Rhino Esport driver right now finding Eddie Fearbold to be a bit of a rash he cannot get rid of, and that's the thing. No matter how much you try to get away from Eddie Fearbold, when he's on the back of you, he is going to be there with you for the long term. He is one of those drivers who definitely has got a lot of ability and a lot of pace once he is in that zone, as we mentioned earlier on. As we can see there, Fearbold's BMW just holding its ground for now, not quite able to find a move. As we've got some change to the foot further up the order, I do believe, as they make the way off the corner. But we stay here for a brief moment as Fearbold taking another peek. Looks once, thinks not about it. Looks twice. Now he's definitely thinking about it. Does he look thrice here in towards turn number 11? And the answer is going to be no, not quite. Eddie Fearbold in the 100 just waits for now. He's trying to tease out this move. But back to the front of the field we go. 5 minutes complete. Still plenty more laps in this race. And James Howard still leading ahead of Barry Wenman. That gap, 4 tenths of that. And Peter Florian, who started in second, dropped to third, got passed by Barry Wenman at the start of the race, but to be fair, has not lost the leaders and could be playing the game right now, protect the tyres and save the fuel. And of course, one of the big question marks this upcoming season with the iRacing 2026 Season 3 update giving us the option to change what is the pit stop regulations. Well, we'll come back to that very shortly, because right now there's a battle going on and strategy is not as important as tactical fun. As me and Rachel Hughes come around the outside there, Ross Gillette, who is really having a dig in here, the privateer. It's impressive driving from here, and well, they're showing each other to be just as equal, as that was Ross Wheatley there trying to take a cheeky move on the inside of Rachel Hughes, and in the end he's actually cost himself some time, but Gillette a bit safer now, and I think he'll be saying thank you underneath his visor to what will be Ross Wheatley for a brief moment for being a bit of a nuisance there. Not an unfair nuisance, but Ross Wheatley right now being shouldered down the order. The Irishman here slipping down as they make the way in towards turn number 6. That was the Theobald going around the outside of him, as well as Marcus Clayton at turn number 5. And I think Wheatley at this point is going to be wondering what's wrong with the car. And he has had a couple of moments so far, but I think he's just got to get himself back in rhyme and rhythm here. It hasn't quite worked out. Off camera, Peter Armstrong's making his way out the pit lane. His car had to come into the pits due to damage. We will get a replay of that most likely what happened. And, well, now he's making his way back out, which is great to hear. So we'll get to see him back out there. All 20 of our runners still going. But Wheatley side by side here as I go into that. Well, not Wheatley side by side. That's Theobald versus none other Marcus Clayton side by side. And, well, Eddie Theobald here just holding that line. And Clayton in rematerialises from the ether and backs off there due to discontinuity, not knowing where the other car is. And when you do see a car disappear for a brief moment, keep in mind that's from our perspective. Meanwhile, from the driver's perspective, they lose visibility of everybody else typically. So they don't see anybody, and then suddenly all the cars will reappear. So it's a bit of a scary moment when you get what is known as an internet discontinuity, and therefore everyone has to just take it a little bit more cautiously. But it's the way that iRacing does its netcode, and well, there are articles all over the internet with regards to that system. Indeed, it is an absolutely intriguing system if you're technically minded. But if you're race minded right now, well, we do have what is our top 3 here together, and they do have a 6-second gap to the rest of the field. So it's Howarth, Wenman and Florin, your top 3, all Premier drivers. Then you've got your club leader of Joshua Downing, who, after a bit of an aggressive move on Mikel Salcuni, did find the lead back of the club class. And Salcuni sits in 5th place, second of club. Ahead of Connor Pink behind. You can see Pink there in 6th, just ahead of Scott Kostrich. Kostrich right now continue to follow, completing the top 5 of the Premiers and 7th on the road. Robin Aston is a further 3 seconds behind in 8th place, ahead of Ross Gillette, who right now is finding himself a very popular man with Rachel Hugh. And meanwhile, looking around the outside is Eddie Theobald, trying to get this done, but Rachel says no. Who said you could get involved? And Eddie says, I said I can, as he's going to go too wide here through turn number 6. But in the end, that Corvette on a shorter run, understandably. With the shorter the circumference of the corner, the quicker it is to get you to the next one. But Rachel Hugh now really getting a bit of a hurry-up message being sent by Eddie Theobald, and that message is quite simple. Make the move soon, Rachel, or I'm going to make one for you. And meanwhile, well, Eddie Theobald won't be doing it when he goes that wide, coming out of turn number 8. And well, that's some dancing moves there to get back on the road. That was more rallycross than motorsport as he makes one out, and as he brings himself back on the road. Well, right now, Ross Wheatley right behind, and well, Martin Brandon also there. But Martin Brandon for Axis Simsport in his Ferrari, just playing the patience game. He started 8th in the class, and we're already up to 6th place, and started back in 15th, now into 14th overall. But Martin's one of those drivers as well. We have seen him previously racing the Audi, a bit of an Audi enthusiast, but here at the moment, racing in the Ferrari, and well, good to see him out there once again. He has proven that he can take podiums in the GT3 Championships in the past. He definitely has been an underdog driver, and it's always a lovely day when you get to see him on the podium. You know how hard he's worked for it and how much it means for him. As meanwhile, Danny Weir and Gary Corbin are having a bit of fun because they're fighting a certain place in club, 15th overall, and Weir is the one who right now needs to try and find a way past Corby. But back to Gillette versus Aston as they make the way in. Our cameraman there having trouble keeping up with everything, and as they make the way on through, Rachel Hugh still has the problem, but it's another Premier driver now. It's not Eddie Theobald, it's Robin Aston who decides to now put himself on the inside in towards turn number 3, and the 5M Racer drive goes for it, but Rachel Hugh goes later on the brakes and really abusing the brakes of that Corvette. It's the Blue Sky Esports drive. She's doing incredibly well to get that car stopped. I can only imagine how much ABS is being triggered there, unless Rachel Hugh has literally got a left foot that's as light as a feather under braking, which is possible. But meanwhile, we can see there Marcus Clayton versus Robin Aston, and Eddie Theobald saw the space in the middle, and I think there was a devil on his left-hand shoulder saying, go on, you know you want to do it. And Eddie Theobald, in saying he was of sound state of mind, decided not to go for the free wide there, and I think that's for the best. But we can't focus on that for too long because Connor Pink just make his way past Mikel Salcuni, coming through turn 7 into 8, and Kostrich looking up the inside, but they all push each other to the inside there, and that was Salcuni saying to Kostrich, no, you're not doing that because I'm doing that. And well, Connor Pink was probably looking in his left-hand mirror and thinking, what on earth are they all doing behind me? And well, oh, goodness me, and that's a missed braking marker there by what was Mikel Salcuni. Wanted to go for the switch to the inside, but unfortunately just tapped the rear of Connor Pink's car, and I think Pink being sent to the barrier into the gravel trap, and well, we'll get a replay of that. That was not intentional. That was what was happening, was simply that Mikel Salcuni wanted to quickly throw it up the inside, but he just mistimed it by about a metre, or what is to the driver's eye the best part of only about 400ths of a second in that situation. And well, by mistiming it by that much, that's what led to the contact. Otherwise, it could have been a candidate for move of the season, and given this is pre-season, well, that would be a very early candidate at that. But meanwhile, as all the racing goes on, well, Eddie Theobald and still stuck behind Marcus Clayton, Rachel Hugh, Ross Gillette and Mikhail Salcuni, the 100 privateer right now. He'll definitely be looking at some thinking, why can't I pass them? Meanwhile, well, understand, there's been a bit of change in front. Well, the answer to that is that these club drivers right now, they have no fear. And if you're sat there right now thinking, okay, this is pre-season, but what happens in reality as Danny Weir makes about the inside of Robin Aston, what happens in reality when we are racing for points? How do drivers score points? If you're new here to the GT3 Championship on Thursdays, well, it's all about class position. So, let's say hypothetically, Danny Weir was to take not just the club win, but also to take the overall win in Split B in a given race. He gets no extra points for it. He'll definitely get a lot of praise for doing so, and he'll definitely get some raised eyebrows from his rivals saying, shouldn't you be in Premier? That's always the way, but to be fair, everybody can have their special day. Sometimes drivers are specialists at circuits, sometimes Lady Luck supports them, sometimes it's a mixture of both, you never know. But understandably, the aim of the game is to be the best in your class. Beyond that, everything else is up to you. So, if you do want to battle with drivers in another class, you're welcome to, but you're always left guessing to yourself, is it worth doing it? And we have seen in previous seasons, sometimes what a club driver may do, for example, is actually put a couple of Premier drivers where possible between them and their nearest club rival to use them as a buffer. It's always a tactic, but of course, at the end of the day, it's a volition of the drivers whether they want to use a tactic such as that or not. But meanwhile, as Marcus Clayton tries to keep Eddie Theobald behind for some time, well, we have a bit of a quiet period in this race, and therefore we have an opportunity to take a look back at some of the big moments in this race. Although saying that, oh, Rob Mackay's had a bit of a moment coming out of turn number 9, and well, the car's definitely gone around there. Not quite sure what's happened to Mackay, but I can tell you one thing, that's not the way he's wanted it to go. And as he tries to get himself back on the road, well, let's take a trip back in time, ladies and gentlemen, and bring up to speed with some of the big moments from the start of this race. And so, as we got underway, the field went green, and James Howarth led them all in towards turn number 1. And we do have the lovely look of the blimp camera here, which of course, they all look like ants at first, getting how far they are away, but then you'll see the whole field come very close to the blimp camera as they exit turn number 2. And James Howarth, well, he dictated the start, and he nailed it there, as then the rest of the field came in. A bit of a free wide further back, but everyone saved them through the opening 2 quarters. But then they made their way down in towards what was turn number 3. As they did so, you could see the top 4 line astern. It was really behind where all the fun and fighting was, with Robin Aston there going up the inside, and Mikhail Salcuni trying to hold him at bay. And that's where Joshua Downing in retook the lead of the club class, at least initially, as we also saw some elbows out further behind. But then, from that, we started to see a few moments of difficulty for some drivers, including what was a bit of a big moment for none other than Danny Weir on lap number 2. And this was Danny having things go a bit wrong as he made his way out to turn number 4. As he did so, got the power down, but the rear of the car started to step out, and that was just the rear right tyre saying, I cannot give you any more grip, as he almost went to the barrier there, but managed to keep it away from the barrier just about. A lap later, Gavin Corby had some difficulty as well. The Lamborghini driver, who at the time was being chased by Rob Mackay, he made his way through turns 1 and 2. Turn 2, of course, and a lot of gravel brought onto the circuit, and when he touched that gravel, it caused him to understeer a little bit wide there, but thankfully he was able to get back on the road. But then Rob Mackay got very close. He didn't quite look for the move into turn 3, but he was getting ready for it. Sadly, lap number 3 did see the difficulties and demise of Ghost Squadron Esports is Peter Armstrong. This was at turn number 9. Carried a bit too much speed off the corner, and unfortunately then went to the grass, corrected his error, but he corrected it too late and ended up powering on the grass, and the rear right tyres decided they were going to go for a bit of a spin. But then we also did have a bit of difficulty for Rob Mackay. And this was Mackay making his way down towards turn number 9. And, well, in the end, he made his way on in. Well, he's already had one mistake there, but this was before he had that mistake. And this one was going very wide there. A bit too much speed. And in the end, we did see Gavin Corby sweep around the outside of him. But as he did so, well, then we also did have what was this moment for Connor Pink. This was on lap 6. And, well, Connor Pink in the end put the car in the middle of the road, battling the course with Mikhail Salcuni. Salcuni went for the switch at last possible moment and unfortunately just mistimed it. And, well, Connor Pink sent to the barrier. This is what it looked like on board from Salcuni's perspective as they made their way onwards. And, well, it was a quick switch. And you can see that under braking, Salcuni decided at the last moment to swap to the inside, but it was just a bit too late on the reactions. You heard the crunch of the front bumper against the rear bumper of Connor Pink, and unfortunately that put in Connor Pink's race out of commission for the time being. We also had difficulty for Ross Wheatley a little bit moments later. And this was, I believe, coming out to turn 9. So in towards turn 10. Oh, clips across the front there of the 125. And that was in contact with none other than Robin Aston that sent him spinning around. And the 150 driver with a McLaren that was more in bits of Lego at that point than it was a fully manufactured car in terms of all the bits coming off of it. Not the way you wanted it to go. And that was a tow to the pits for Ross Wheatley. With that, we also had Rob Mackay getting a bit wrong on lap number 7. And this was the corner he'd understeered wide earlier. But this time, well, it was getting the power down too soon and oversteering and a brief biff to the barrier there into the tyre barrier. Not too much damage to the car, although definitely he's testing the crumple zones on that front bumper. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to your live racing. As we do come back, Rob Mackay keeping his head down and carrying on as best he can as we are now onto lap number 10. And as we are, well, Marcus Clayton fighting there with Eddie Fearbold. And, well, we have seen Rachel Hugh fall down the order quite recently. In fact, I think there's been a bit of incidents happen whilst we have been looking back at some of the big moments. Sadly, we won't be able to go back to what's happened whilst we're in replay mode there. That's why the technical limitations we do have with this post-round broadcast. We do apologise for that. But meanwhile, we do see Eddie Fearbold there up the inside of Clayton, just like that. And a very straightforward move there for Eddie Fearbold, but I think Marcus Clayton, knowing that the party has ended a little bit and he doesn't want to get involved in the fight. Meanwhile, Rob Mackay has had a bit of another moment there, and that is at turn 13 to 14. The Dexterous Motorsport Cyan drivers definitely growing a whole collection of moments at the moment, and that's not an accolade you necessarily want. That's you and car and circuit not in harmony. But Simon Hunt, after his difficulties earlier on in the race, well, right now he's chasing after Gavin Corby as we ride on board with your 273 driver. Now making his way onwards here, the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, of course. Bit of an interesting car. It's not the pace car necessarily, although balance performance always will dictate what is on pace and what is not. However, what is very interesting about this car is the fact for a front-engine rear-wheel drive car, many say it's the front mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, which is true. The way the engine is mounted, that Mercedes V8 power plant supplemented by twin-turbo system, it is mounted as much as possible behind the front axle, so towards the centre of the car. And that's how you get a front mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, much like the Mercedes AMG Evo. Whereas other cars, such as the Ford Mustang, a good portion of the engine is actually leaning over the front axle, and that is a pure front engine rear-wheel drive car because the engine is over the front. As Simon Hunt makes his way on through here, means his Aston Martin's got quite a lot of cornering capability for a car that you would expect to be more understeer than oversteer. Whereas, of course, when you do have mid-engine rear-wheel drive machines such as the Lamborghini, well, it's the opposite picture. As Hunt dives up the inside there, Corby gives him all the space and more real estate to play with. And once they make the way out to the corner, it's going to be too wide hitting to the next braking zone. Does Hunt get this done? He does. Lovely move there from Simon Hunt, and that is going to happily move him up into 9th place in club. So good effort there. Well, Gavin Corby being very respectful, to be fair, but he had to really show his intent, and Hunt did get that to work. But we have had a bit of a change. Martin Brandon now is up in the 3rd place in the club class. He's making some progress with Danny Weir and Marcus Clayton behind. And how did they change places, I hear you ask? Well, we take a look back, and this was none other than Martin Brandon moving up the field. So it was Eddie Fearbold and Marcus Clayton fighting. We just left them only moments ago, and then Clayton had a really poor run off the corner. And in fact, Martin Brandon just diving up the inside there. Interesting. I wonder, the only thing I can think of, either Marcus Clayton missed a gear, which isn't impossible to be fair. They are twin clutch semi-manual automatic engined machinery, or in fact transmissionaires. I tried to find my words. I've spilled them out of my mouth onto the table and picked them all up. But they are, let's try that again. They are twin clutch semi-automatic cars, whereby essentially you go up from gear to gear. But it looks like Marcus Clayton there didn't find a gear coming out of turn number 6. And Danny Weir tried to go around the outside of him to complete what was a 2-for-1 on Marcus Clayton. But this is the worst possible 2-for-1 special that you can get, whereby you're having things taken from you, not gaining things out of that offer. Well, Marcus Clayton losing out there as Danny Weir beats him on the brakes into turn 11, and on that outside, that inside line is not going to hold unless you're a nose ahead into the braking zone, and then you can force the right to have that corner. But that was some great moving there for Martin Brandon and Danny Weir as we head back to your live racing. As we do come back, well, we come back to the fight here of Weir on the inside of Brandon. So Danny Weir right now going on the attack. And will he get this done, the Dexterous Motorsport Cyan driver? The answer is yes, no, maybe. Oh, no, and they go into contact with each other there? Two lines are going to join together, and unfortunately joining the dots, and Martin Brandon does take that place, albeit Danny Weir rejoins their cone over the gravel at turn 14, although I suspect he will have picked up an automated slowdown for that, subject to the iRacing shielding system doing its work. But right now, that suddenly brings Marcus Clayton right back in, and you can see what Brandon was trying to go for there. What he was trying to do was essentially cut a tight line. I don't think Weir expected that to happen, and suddenly the two of them came together. Two different lines, both fighting for the same space. It was always going to end in perhaps a little bit of a rub, unless Weir really chucked the cards the outside of the corner. Bit of a controversial one perhaps there, but I wouldn't want to say who's at fault and who's not. Thankfully, that's why we do have stewards who'll be covering all the incidents that are reported after each and every round and event of racing this season, as they always do at SimRacing International. A very highly priced set of stewards, no doubt about it. There's no live stewarding in any of our events. We don't quite have the facilities for that, but we definitely have a huge stewarding team, which does have two levels of stewarding. We have the initial level, and if drivers are not too happy with a stewarding outcome, if they see things differently, it can be appealed. There is a right of appeal. And also, what is very unique, of course, at SimRacing International with regards to our stewarding system is that when, let's say hypothetically, should Danny Weir protest what happened there between himself and Martin Brandon, he would submit a protest. He has to provide all the evidence and footage like you would in real life, of course. But there then is the opportunity for all drivers involved in the incident to essentially communicate with each other in a controlled setting, we should point out. They can't start throwing insults at each other and memes and things along those lines. They have to keep it formal, much like you would as part of the Motorsport UK Code of Conduct. And, well, then they are expected to try and see their differences. And typically, what has been found at SimRacing International, about 80 to 90% of incidents that happen, they can be sorted out by just having the two drivers speak to each other, and it's normally only the worst 10 to 20% of incidents where there really has been something malicious that's happened, perhaps. Those are the ones that need to go to the stewards. It is quite an innovative system we have, and it definitely has shown it can work. And that's what I suspect when they get out the cars later, they'll both talk about it, but I don't think it'll escalate more than that. Because to be fair, Martin was looking on his line, Danny was looking on his line, and in the end of the heat of the moment, well, you both think you're in the right when you both end up in the wrong. And what is it they say? Two wrongs don't make a right. Well, at the same time as well, two rights definitely made a wrong there. But as they make the way on through, Marcus Clayton now, well, if they're fighting each other, he's right now in the middle of the sandwich, or you could think he's the referee in the middle of a boxing match as they come down in towards turn number 3 for the 30th time of asking. But looking back from the rear of Martin Brandon's car, well, right now it's Ferrari 296 finding a friend in the form of a fellow Ferrari, but not a teammate as he makes his way out of turn number 3. Now that angle there, that camera already giving an idea of the quick rotation that Brandon has on the car. And more mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars and rear-engine rear-wheel drive, the Porsche 992 being the only GT3 in the current era of GT3 racing that is a true rear-engine rear-wheel drive where the engine is mounted over the rear axle, whereas mid-engine rear-wheel drive, the engine is before the rear axle in the car if you go from front to back, but it is behind the driver. That's why it's known as the middle engine. Well, the Porsche there having a lot more rotation. The car's driven on the throttle, but even in mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars, you do drive them more on the throttle than you do with regards to the steering wheel. So the whole idea is you're moving the weight around behind you, and that's why these cars typically have the better cornering capabilities, but it normally comes at the cost of something. Tyre life can be one thing, because remember, the rear tyres, they've got all the weight over them, plus they're doing all the drive work. The front tyres just doing the steering work by comparison. And on top of that as well, they are held back, not just by tyre life, but also by straight line speed, whereas front engine rear-wheel drive definitely leans more into acceleration and top end speed capabilities. But there's also weight penalties on cars. The Ford Mustang, I believe at this time, the heaviest of your GT3 cars on iRacing. Indeed, it's a very heavy car. It's a very wide car as well for the 7th generation Ford Mustang. And Lectures Motorsport Cyan driver of James Howarth, definitely making it look like a feather at the moment as he drives it. But meanwhile, we do see Garen Corby making his way on past Peter Armstrong, as we have lost Rob Mackay from this race, it should be pointed out. I don't think we quite get a replay of what's happened to Rob Mackay, but I believe he's been involved in some sort of incident beyond the ones we have seen. So Mackay, the first drive into the pit lane and being just sat in the pits at the moment, and that may be his race over, sadly. But as we do have Danny Weir into the pits, well, it means that Ross Gillette and Ben Wayne coming through, as does Rachel Hugh. You can see that Danny Weir in the pit lane, and we'll take in his scheduled stop for Dexter's Motorsport Cyan, and there's the wounded car of Rob Mackay set there right now. And well, if Rob's out of the race, well, he could potentially walk away, but a big thank you to Rob for staying in the iRacing lobby to give us this iRacing replay file, and that's how we do this post-round broadcast, as we mentioned earlier. Indeed, Rob sacrificing his time for the greater good of you guys and girls to be able to watch this. But as we do see at Martin Brandon, joining Marcus Clayton for a bit of company. The racing is calming down a little bit at Motegi at the moment, but this could be the calm before the storm. We are now more into the strategic window of the racing. Now, if you tuned into Split A, you may remember, of course, we only had 12 drivers there, but they had an absolute blast of a time across our Elite and Pro classes. And what we did see strategy-wise is that you could take this 70% fuel tank to the best part of 40 to 45 minutes if you wanted to. And that's the thing about the 70% fuel tank. In our feature races, subject to the circuit, of course, and how much fuel saving is being done by drivers and other factors, including which way the sun's pointing, we will normally see a pit window of around about what is 15 to 45 minutes. The tightest will be around about 20 to 40 minutes into the race. But what that does is it actually gives us quite a lot of strategic variety, as Rachel Hugh, looking on the inside of Robin Aston, well, trying to take a place back overall here. These two have been fighting. Rachel trying to get through, and she finally does so on the inside there, and Robin Aston not offering too much of a defence, as Rachel Hugh powering away and past. But understandably, that front bumper on Robin Aston's car looks quite pushed in, and what I would understand is that he's perhaps losing some straight line speed, and may also not have as much front and downforce as he would normally expect in the Porsche 902. But going back to strategy, of course, we do have in our endurance races then a much tighter pit window for the potential one stop, whereby drivers, if they're going to try the one stop, they'll normally have to extend the fuel tank by about 5 minutes at a minimum, and we normally only have a 10-minute pit window on a one-stop strategy, whereas on a two-stop, of course, it'll be much wider. But the one thing that everyone is asking, understandably, we're curious in the content booth as well, what will be the regulations we use for pit stops for this season? Because, as I was saying earlier, until all the racing absolutely exploded onto our screen, new for this season, Simon Hunt comes into the pit lane to take his one and only pit stop today, his scheduled stop, and Peter Armstrong does the same, a lap down behind. But new as of the 2026 season 3 iRacing update is the fact that we do now have what is different pit regulations, whereas the IMSA regulations, which we are typically run into in GT3 official races, they do allow the change in a tyre simultaneously with fuel going into the car. But there are regulations as well which do say you must put fuel in first and then tyres. You cannot do them at the same. That would be the World Endurance Championship regulations from the GTE era, whereby the rule book back then in 2023, the final year of GTEs, would say the car must have the car must be touching the ground for what is all the fuel to put in the car, and therefore you cannot do fuel and tyre simultaneously, because for the tyres to be changed, the car has to be off the ground essentially. And if you're sat there thinking, and indeed I like the smart Alec thinking of some of you might be thinking, well, couldn't they just raise the car diagonally on one side and put the fuel on the other? Well, there are restrictions on how many members of the pit team could be working on the car at the same time, and also how the pneumatic jacks underneath the car would work, and therefore that ruled out the ability to essentially float the car diagonally whilst also putting fuel, so you'd be leaning on two of the tyres. But beside the point, those regulations could completely change the complexion of pit stops, whereas typically in the past we have seen tyres and fuel be done simultaneously, which has normally led to quite a static set of pit stop types, where it is fuel goes in car, and depending on the length of the amount of fuel that needs to go in, one or two tyres will be changed at most. We could enter into a season whereby, if they're done separately, well, we may see only fuel going to the car and drivers have to drive on very old tyres. Or you see drivers gamble by changing all the tyres and having the fuel going to the car. That'll be the way the intrigue is. But as Martin Brandon comes in and his car being serviced, well, right now it looks like only fuel going into that Ferrari 296. And we're getting ready to go once again. But as the car just waits there at the moment, it is quite a long pit stop for him. It's the best part of 26.3 seconds. But no sign of the car going up on the tracks there. That will just be fuel as he makes his way down towards what will be at turn number 1. But as he does so, Barry Wentman now experiencing some pressure here from Peter Florian. And well, after James Howarth was able to gradually break away, we thought Wentman was looking safe, and Florian now going on the attack. And I get the feeling what our Czechia driver has been doing is he's just been waiting this out until the pit stop window. Here he looks around the outside, and too wide they come in towards turn number 11. A first attempt there, that doesn't work, as we ride on board the dashboard here of your 147 Privateer. Now, as Wentman carries on, took a very wide line there. I thought he was going stuck into the pits at the last minute, but I think that's his natural racing line as well. Indeed, coming through turns 12 and 13, you do want to open up 30 as much as possible. It's a very weird sequence of corners, that, because the wider you go out to 12, the better the theoretical line you get into 13 and 14 with it. But the wider you go as well, the bigger the weight transfer you cause from rear axle to front axle of the car, and it means that suddenly you can actually cause the rear of the car to slide loose. So typically what you will see, particularly less confident drivers, they take a tighter X line out to 12 to give them a slightly tighter entry into 13 and 14. It compromises their line, but it means they can get on the brakes and the car doesn't wobble over the rear axle. Whereas those who are more confident and it's one of the key things that McLaren is exceptionally good at, given the way its aero is packaged around the rear of the chassis. What you do see with that McLaren is drivers like Barry Werner will go much wider because they have got the confidence the car will stay planted when they go onto the brakes, and that is one of the strengths that you will see of the McLaren 720S Evo drivers, is that they have the ability to use direction changes a lot more effectively than other drivers. And as he rolls his way through the corners right now, that medium speed sequence at turn 7-8, really McLaren territory. The Porsche will be quick through there, but the McLaren will be the quickest of the two of them slightly, because it is able to transfer its weight much more effectively. As they roll the way onwards, we've got more pit stops coming. Ross Gillette is in, and Garen Corby comes in as well in the rear of the picture, and you'll see him very gradually tiptoeing his way down, but our cameraman decides to pick up a different feed there, and will make his way on through, and in towards the braking zone he goes, underneath the Power of Dreams, but that's not the slogan associated with Lamborghini, I can assure you of that. I'm not quite sure what the brand mantra is. Somebody please feel free to enlighten me if you do know. But as me, well, we do see a lot of our drivers coming into the pits. Josh Downing at the moment for Type 2 Racing. And carrying on, and well, the 267 driver right now looking very much in control of this race as he makes his way through turn number 11. Front right brake disc line red hot, carbon ceramics of course, but they will get hot, and if they start to go above 500 degrees centigrade, normally our drivers will get a bit of a warning come up on their dashboard to say the brakes are getting hot, they need to start cooling them down. But Downing coming on the pit limit line. Lovely execution to come into the pit lane there. That was poetry in motion, that. And that's not me being sarcastic. That is a very difficult pit lane to get into. It looks easy from that camera angle. It just looks like a slalom. But let me assure you of this, ladies and gentlemen. When you're in the car, and remember in iRacing, all drivers must drive in a cockpit view. They are not allowed to drive from a third person perspective, well, it does mean you've got very little visibility. Even if you're running a triple monitor setup, the fact you've got to look over the front of the car to really be able to see where the apexes are of that slalom. But with Downing in from the lead of the club class, it does open up the doorway to Mikhail Salcuni and also Marcus Clayton. And Verano Esports may be looking at a double podium here, albeit let's wait and see which way it goes. Wendland versus Florian continues, but James Howarth right now 5 seconds clear and very much controlling this race at this time. But for these drivers right now, it is all part of the game plan here of keeping it calm, cool, and consistent. And that will be the biggest test that you will see here at Motegi. And, well, we will see that then echoed, funny enough, in our season finale in Japan at Suzuka. Both circuits whereby it's not about how you feel at the start of the race, it's about how well you manage the car and your pace over the race distance. They are very brutal circuits on brakes and tyres. Motegi particularly on front brakes. This is a circuit being very quickly overheat those brakes if you don't get it right. Right now, Wayne behind Downing, so Joshua Downing's bought himself some clear track. Good work there from the Type 2 Racing pit crew to be getting him in at the right time. And well, now he'll just see if he can make it all the way to the end without any issue. Simon Hunt, meanwhile, still chasing after Garen Corby. The two of them pitted 2 laps apart. Corby has got ahead, and the Quackmass Motorsport driver right now still in pursuit. Let's wait and see whether he'll be able to handle the fruits of his labour. Or reap the fruits of his labour, we should say. But as James Howarth, a lap ahead of them, goes on to what is his 19th tour of the circuit, a 50.77 there to the nearest 100th. The dexterous Mercer Cyan driver still looking very quick out there, no doubt about it. So he's in degree of control. Barry Wenman, meanwhile, still has Florian for company. And then you've got a 17-second gap to Scott Kostrich, who disappears and reappears on the ether. And right now, Mikhail Salcuni right behind him. Personal best there, a 51.273 for Salcuni, so he's continuing to turn up the wick as best he possibly can. And well, does look as though the Ferrari driver at the moment getting into a bit of flow and rhythm, but remember he has got a pit stop to do, so he's in the lead of the club class only on track at the moment, but we believe it's Joshua Downing who is still in the lead on strategy. And Marcus Clayton, Salcuni's teammate, 16 seconds behind. Oh, as we do look to Clayton, where are the closest battles? Well, the field at the moment has definitely spread itself out. And, well, the closest battle you will see out there is Wenman versus Florian for second place in Premier and overall. 25 minutes left to go then, and as we continue our way down the field, Rachel Hugh sitting in third at the moment in club, what will be fourth as we understand it, given the pit stop for Joshua Downing. And she makes her way on around. One thing that's quite interesting, in fact, coming back to Martin Brandon, that pit stop of 26.38 seconds. We didn't see the car up on the jacks there. I wonder if he's had to take a lot of extra fuel. Perhaps he's been pushing very hard and has not saved the fuel at all, because Danny Weir is in front of him. In fact, Brandon is catching up, and as he makes his way onwards, I think Brandon is getting himself a bit more fuel, unless he really has a thirsty car there. The Ferrari's not normally known to be that thirsty a machine. to be fair, you can drive these cars hard, and lift and coast is a very powerful tool in your arsenal. As Brandon goes chasing after 6th place in club at the moment versus Weir, but into the pits from 3rd place in Premier and overall, it's Peter Florin as he makes one down pit road, and that releases Barry Wenman to essentially carry on without pressure. Let's wait and see which way that will go between them as he gets ready to come to his pit stall. And whilst he's being serviced, Martin Brandon continues to chase after Danny Weir, and we ride on board here with your 2-3-6 driver. As he weaves his way between the apexes once again. Well, for Martin Brandon, as they both make their way past the DC motorsport car there of Ross Wheatley, getting out of the way, respecting the blue flags. Well, Martin Brandon here definitely has shown his potential in this Ferrari. And it will be interesting if he turns up in this car on round number 1 at Watkins Glen in a day's time as they come through the right-hander of turn number 10, because it does seem to be a car that he's quite comfortable with. And the Access SimSport driver right now definitely pushing onwards. But Danny Weir is no easy driver to catch, to be fair, for Dexterous Motorsport Cyan. We have seen Danny have some great results in the past, as has Martin, and these two should be very good competition for each other. They, of course, did have that little bit of a moment earlier on, going through this very sequence of corners, turns 12 into 13, where they both had different opinions of their lines that they're going to use, and, well, they seem to have got past that. We're ahead at the moment with a 3-second faster stop, but right now, Brandon definitely getting ready to attack as they head on to another lap. They're coming back. Oh, what's happened here? That is Mikhail Salkuni and Scott Kostrich together. And well, contact between the two of them. Kostrich is not too impressed about that. So I think there's a bit more than meets the eye. And Salkuni gives the space back immediately there. And so, well, I think Salkuni may have just overcooked it into turn number 9. And Kostrich may have been looking to go into the corner. And then suddenly found himself being escorted out a lot wider than he anticipated. Can we get a quick replay of that? Yes, we can. So this is what happened, ladies and gentlemen, as we do take a trip back in time. Of course, it was the run in towards turn 1 for the two drivers as they made the way through what was the opening 2 corners. This was how they started laps, that gives you an idea of how close they were. But then we did have this happen between Salkuni and Kostrich, and this was coming in towards turn 9. So Salkuni had the better run there through turn 8, and we'll look around the outside and then swap to the inside at last moment. That's what he tried to do earlier on versus none other than what was the machinery of, I do believe, Connor Pink. He did go for it, but in the end, well, I don't think it was Kostrich who was too happy about it. I think he ended up leaning too much on Kostrich's car. Can we get the on board of that potentially? Well, here we go then, and let's listen in. This is definitely going to be a spectacle. And indeed, you can see what he's going for, but as soon as he got onto the brakes there, just a little bit too late, and he did lean on Kostrich's car, and that's why, as we look at the rear view camera, he offered to up the pace, because he essentially had lent, and that would have been effectively a push to pass if he'd held onto the position. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we go back to your racing. And as we do come back, well, Mikhail Salkuni definitely demonstrating, whilst he's a daring racer, he's also a very fair racer. And indeed, the fairest way of racing is if you feel that you're at fault, address the position straight away, give it back, and the stewards will always look kindly to that. It may still get reported by the driver, to be fair, and at the end of the day, drivers are encouraged to report incidents, even if it is addressed on the circuit. They are naturally encouraged to, because every time we can learn from things, well, it's always good out there, and all the incidents that do occur, they go into a big book of examples. Indeed, we do have the best part now of, I think, 5 years worth, or in fact 4 years worth of incidents, and those are called out of the encyclopedias here at SimRacing International, because we try to be as consistent as possible. And well, believe you and me, sometimes when incidents are looked at, we go all the way back to the very first seasons to see how we judge incidents back then, to make sure we're always uniform in the way we do things. Our stewarding style and guidelines have been updated over the course of the last few seasons and over the last couple of years, but we always try to go for consistency where possible. But Simon Hunt chase after Gavin Corby at the moment. We're still trying to find a way back past the Lamborghini driver for 9th place in club. But both these drivers right now on their final stint of the race, and well, just keeping their heads down. Still got 20 minutes to go. Scott Kostrich is still out there on the circuit. James Howard and Barry Winman still. We've got a lot of drivers who have yet to pit. And, well, understandably, there's still a bit of a question mark over when our drivers are going to come in. And in terms of the number of pit stops made, well, you can see those there on your timing tower. And, well, those 0 to name are still to come in. As Ben Wayne, or as soon as we talk about a driver coming into the pit, he's the one who does make his way down pit road. and comes in from 5th in the club class at the time. That will release Joshua Downing. There goes Downing, making his way out of turns 1 and 2 already. And we're chasing after the top 3 in club. And I think it feels like it's coming his way. He's just got to keep it calm, cool, and consistent. This is looking to be a very safe win for Joshua Downing in the club class, strategically at least. But of course, anything can change. And that's the thing. When you've come into the pits earlier than your rivals to go for an undercut strategy effectively, you've always got to believe in the strategy. At this point, don't let anything distract you. Don't let the little voice in the back of your head tell you that you've done the wrong strategy. And that's how you lose races, essentially, because suddenly you start to drive differently. You start to push yourself too hard, or actually you lose faith in it and you start to drive slower. You have to keep your head down. And where it all sounds very easy when we articulate it to you, but trust me, ladies and gents, but it's one of those situations whereby mental fortitude, whether it's on the sim racing rig or in a real-life motorsport, is a huge part of achieving victory in a race, for the simple reason when you start to lose belief, you may not notice it, but you start to drive differently. And when you start driving differently, you lose time, or your behaviour becomes a bit more erratic than normal. But as all these drivers head on through, Ross Gillette chasing after Ben Wayne. So Wayne has come back out ahead of the privateer from Wales. So a bit of a change there, with Wayne making some ground, the 233 driver. And Gillette will be watching on his BMW M4 Evo, wondering exactly what's happening on strategy. And the simple answer is, it's because Ben Wayne had a pit stop that was 16 seconds in length. Gillette, meanwhile, had a pit stop that was 28 seconds in length by comparison. I suspect some tyres were changed as part of that pit stop. But Rachel Hugh into the pits then from 3rd place in club. Now for Blue Sky Esports, we believe this is essentially going to relegate it down to 4th place, because Joshua Downing was only 11 seconds behind at the time of Hugh coming in. It'll be interesting to see where she comes out in relation to the likes of Danny Weir and Martin Brandon. There goes Joshua Downing on his journey. But meanwhile, where is Danny Weir? There he is, making his way down the Eastern Straight. We look to the blimp camera. This gives us a full-on perspective of how far away they are in relation to Hugh. And I think Rachel Hugh in the end is going to be quite comfortably safe. She's parked up in the pit lane there. And we do look back to Danny Weir then as he makes his way on through. Peter Florian just a bit further up the road. And well, right now Hugh leaving the pits. And for Rachel, she is going to be comfortably safe. That is back in the 4th place for the Blue Sky Esports driver. And Danny Weir there, the best part as the timer is updated. The best part of 6 seconds or so behind, as he does go a bit aggressive there into turn 1, but he gets away with it that time. But that front left brake in that front left tyre are definitely both being leaned on. As Martin Brandon sits behind, and then Ross Wheatley, a lap down, is the 3rd driver in that picture in the orange McLaren. Lovely livery on the car, to be fair, but not the loveliest of races for Ross Wheatley, particularly when all the car came apart earlier on. Well, right now they've been able to glue it back together, if you will, or reassemble it, but it's not the way you wanted it to go. We have a new leader of this race, Barry Wenman for Dexterous Motorsports Magenta, not Cyan. And well, the Magenta driver makes his way on through. James Howarth is into the pits for the sister team of Cyan. And well, difference of colours right now, but Howarth did have a 5-second lead when he came in, and he'll be hoping it'll be more than enough to keep him safe. Miguel Salcuni's into the pit lane for Rhino Esport. This is Marcus Clayton you see on camera. Will he be coming in as well? Something tells me these fuel tanks right now, they might be starting to get a little bit dry. And Clayton does make his way in, the American driver, as Howarth leaves the pit lane and he comes out to a completely empty track in front of him. And well, Howarth now has plenty of space, get himself back up to temperature, and with that can now go on to attack. 14.4 second stop, one of our shortest we have seen. Connor Pink, of course, and a much shorter stop, 10.0 seconds. But that's back on lap number 6. We suspect Connor may be coming in for another, what will be splash and dash of fuel later on. Salcuni comes out the pit. Oh, and that's a lot of smoke up there in the rear. That is Rob Mackay's car going up in smoke, and that's because the engine's been left on there, has not been turned off. And so the engine has blown essentially. Well, goodness me. Well, that was a bit of a surprise there. And well, as we do see, Salcuni carrying on. Joshua Downing just in front, and look at that. Well, that's a change. Joshua Downing's pit stop in 21.5 seconds. Salcuni 14. So Salcuni has gained 7 seconds here. Now, Downing may have changed a tyre or two, to be fair, in order to be able to gain. But if Salcuni and Wes Downing are both on the same strategy, and this is just fuel differential, well, Sonny Salcuni's been holding back. And the Rhino Esport driver, the Italian, he may be on course here to be a bit of a stallion today. To see, 1.4 seconds away from Downing at the moment. And Marcus Clayton 16 seconds behind. But Rhino Esport definitely here with the shortest stops of everybody out of those we believe have done their one only stop and don't need to do another, because that's shortened James Howarth's 14.5 second stop. Barry Wenman into the pit lane. And as he makes his way down pit road, well, the Magenta driver for Dexterous Motorsports, well, where is James Howarth? He's making his way down towards turn number 11. I think this is going to be comfortably Howarth's again, unless Wenman's found a way essentially not to drink any fuel in that fuel tank. I think that's going to be impossible. As we do see Howarth make his way through. Well, Wenman still being serviced. Car static at the moment. And, well, he'll be waited, and well, Howarth will be hoping not to see that car move. It is now moving. James Howarth makes his way down the start finish straight. Here he comes. And meanwhile, Barry Wenman leaving the pit line. This is going to be very close. And Wenman was 2 seconds faster on the fuel gun and entering the pit lane 4 seconds faster in total. So Wenman takes the lead. It's not as straightforward as we thought. So Barry Wenman now for the sister team of Magenta versus Cyan. Well, it's going through the battle of the colours here. And, well, if you don't like Magenta with Cyan, well, you're going to have to pick a side, ladies and gentlemen. And we can't pick a side in the concept if we've got to be neutral as Wenman goes deep there at turn number 3. Cold tyres and James Howarth goes through. Howarth takes the lead back there and Wenman, I think, in a little bit confused. There has been excitement to try and run away from Howarth. In the end, forgetting the fact that one thing you lose at the pits, even if you don't change the tyres, you do lose about 10 degrees centigrade of core temperature, and that hurts the braking zones to the outlap, and it means you've got to treat the outlap as if it's a cold start lap. And, well, for Barry Wenman, that's a mistake that could have just costed the chance of victory. Can he chase down Howarth? Can he find a way to get under his skid? We'll have to see. Meanwhile, we do have a growing battle here between three drivers, Connor Pink, Ben Wayne and Ross Gillette all together as they make the way through on towards what will be their lap 25. So we've got a few battles burgeoning now. Joshua Downey is opened up a gap meanwhile versus what is Mikhail Salkuni. He's got that gap back up to 1.4 seconds, so he might be feeling a bit safe as Wayne goes very deep there at turn number 1 into 2. You can go deep in there, but you've got to have a car that is going to rotate, and the way you do that typically is essentially through the roll bars, where for what is corner entry, you make the front anti-roll bar less stiff, so you weaken it essentially. That gives you more rotation on the front end, as Ben Wayne there has a lot more rotation in his rear end than he wants. I suspect that's a bit too much throttle pedal there through turn number 4, and Ross Gillette gets ahead. Wayne swaps back to the inside, but Ross Gillette gets the job done, and well, your BMW driver now up into 12th place overall, and that will be 7th in club. So another place gain there from the Welshman. Good work going from him. But right now, as he makes his way onwards, of course, those anti-roll bars, if you stiffen the front, you invoke more understeer. The opposite is true at the rear, whereby the stiffer the rear anti-roll bar, the more oversteer you invoke of the car through quarter transition into exit, and you want a weakened anti-roll bar at the rear if you want a car that wants to understeer more on exit, because it's more of a front-driven car. But we can put all that aside, and Peter Florian goes for a bit of a dive there up the inside turn 11. In fact, he's found his way ahead of Marcus Clayton. He's actually lost out in the pits there. Florian's really lost out in the pit stops by comparison. That's something we haven't really talked about. 22-second stop versus what was the 13 and 14-second stops. And in fact, for Barry Wenman, of course, that 12.5-second stop. That's incredible from Wenman. That really was the case. If you want a short pit stop, follow me and I'll show you one. But Peter Florian right now definitely looking to go chasing after what will be Mikhail Salkuni. I actually get the feeling now that it's not Peter, it's Petr, I do believe, much like Petr Cech, the infamous Chelsea goalkeeper, of course, and also a very established drummer, if you didn't know that. Indeed, that's a little bit of trivia that's thrown out there. But whether it's Petr or Peter, I can tell you one thing, Florian right now still in 3rd place in what is the Premier Class, and moving on back up to 5th overall. But I think his race today is going to be a bit confined to what will be 3rd in his category, and he's not going to be able to make up too much more progress than that. It's a bit of a lonely race for him now, and he gradually drops Clayton off into distance. But as we do come back to Ben Wayne, well, the 5M race to try that small mistake proving quite costly, and will Ross Gillette in front as they get ready to complete with lap 26. But as they do, Rachel Hugh getting away for Robin Aston. And how does she find a way past Robin Aston, I hear you ask? Well, here's a quick replay to explain. And this was Rachel Hugh at the time, making her way down the start finish straight. Where was Robin Aston at that moment? Well, Robin will emerge from the left-hand side of your screen very shortly, so just able to get out ahead there of Robin Aston, but it was very tight, no doubt about it. And well, Rachel Hugh just beats Robin Aston on strategy. But then we did have, of course, just before that, this between James Howarth and Barry Wenman, and this was Barry Wenman thinking he got it all done until he outbroke himself into turn number 3 and lost the lead of the race. As he rejoined, and unfortunately taking his frustrations out on a poor innocent cone. Well, meanwhile, we also did have this big moment for Ross Gillette versus Ben Wayne. Well, it was Wayne as he came through turn number 4, just a little bit too wide of the apex there. In fact, went deep through the corner rather than got on the throttle too soon, and it just upset the rear end of his Porsche slightly. And well, the grip levels that corner already low. Wayne looked up the inside to see if he'd try and come back, but it wasn't possible, and Gillette was able to hold it off. And we did have this move from Peter Florian as he made his way down towards turn number 11. And, well, if you're going to go for a dive, you do it Olympic style, as your 147 driver did here. Went straight in. And, well, in the end, Marcus Clayton was quite fair to him, to be fair. Did not try to beat him on the brakes and let it go. And that's why they changed overall position for 5th place. With that, we go back to your live racing. And as we do come back, still 10 minutes of this race to go. We've still got a bit of time out there. There's still always the risk of a little bit of drama before it's all said and done. And, well, nothing is over until it's over, as they say. And that's why you continue racing until you've literally seen the first corner of the lap after the checkered flag. Because not all circuits are the timing lines and the checkered flag lines in the exact same position. And I'll tell you one thing, I've seen races won and lost in the past as a result of a driver back it off at the checkered flag rather than carry it on until they actually get to the official end line of the race, or the final timing line. But as Dexterous Motorsport Science, James Howarth carries his journey on, being kept honest by Barry Wenman and Joshua Downing right now. 1.7 seconds clear of Mikhail Salkuni. Well, he's opened that gap back up. In fact, really opened it up back right now. That last lap, although that run out of turn 13 through 14 wasn't the best, but Downing does seem to be just keeping himself at a very comfortable distance. 52.047 versus 52.134 for Salkuni. Downing's got the pace advantage by a small margin for Type 2 racing. Can he keep it together then? Well, we'll see. As meanwhile, Robin Aston is in pursuit of Rachel Hugh, but this will be for overall position only, as Hugh trying to close up to Marcus Clayton. And in fact, she's doing a fantastic job of that. There is Clayton at the bottom of your picture in the yellow and blue Bilstein Ferrari for what is Rhino Esports. Rachel Hugh here in the pink into dark blue or deep blue Corvette with the green wing mirrors as well and the wing trails. But right now, doing a brilliant job as she makes her way onwards. She continues to chase down Clayton. That last lap, she did take the best part of 1.2 seconds out of Marcus Clayton. She carries this on. She is going to be with him right at the end. Oh, there's a lot of bodywork there. I wonder... Well, I think we now know whose bodywork that is. That's Ross Wheatley. I don't know how it's come off the car, but he's lost his front bumper quite recently. That is not ideal for the DC Motorsport driver. You could say that's suboptimal in terms of the aerodynamics of that McLaren now. And for Ross Wheatley, this definitely has been a race. So that car's been in pieces twice now. Earlier on in the race, but they had to put it all back together using the fast repair in the pit lane. And now he's lost his front bumper again. Has he been involved in an incident with somebody? Potentially. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get you a replay of that. But what is potentially telling is that we have lost Danny Weir from this race. And we've lost him quite recently from the race as well. So perhaps that explains it. But though we've got nothing else in that, so we can't confirm or deny that the two have had a bit of a moment. It could be completely separate incidents or instances, to be fair. So we won't conjecture any further on that. But what we will do is talk about something that is happening. And that is Howarth has still got Barry Wenman behind him. And Wenman is closing little by little. That last lap, Wenman took 7 tenths out of Howarth. And the Dexterous Motorsports Cyan driver right now definitely feeling a lot more pressure around a bit wide there, 3 into 4. That'll count as what will be an instant point. And remember, they do get 16 of them before they see a drive-through penalty. And for the uninitiated, instant points are picked up on iRacing as a result of off-tracks. That is 1 instant point. Losses of control to the car. That's where you essentially, the stewarding system deems that you are not controlling the car in a safe manner. That is 2 instant points. And if you make contact with another driver, you and the driver you make contact with, you both get 4 instant points. And there's no discrimination from the automated stewarding system as to who calls the instant and who did not. You both get those instant points, even if it's not your fault. It tries to promote the mentality, which is it takes 2 to tango when an instant occurs in racing, which is very true. And, well, you need to avoid making contact where possible. But as we see Howarth and Wenman together, making their way onwards towards what will be the next braking zone. One thing to note about contact between cars, if it is a small rub or a very gentle touch, particularly if they're trying to bump draft each other down a long straight, that will be considered a 0x contact. i.e. contact is registered, but given the lightness or the lack of severity, it is normally seen as just a contact in passing. But we have Martin Brandon getting ahead of Robin Aston there. Aston rejoining after a bit of an episode. So the 5M Racing driver now drops down to 9th place overall. Brandon up into 8th place overall. Stays 5th in the club class. He's chasing after Rachel Hugh. And in fact, he's taking the best part of a second lap out of Hugh now, as Rachel Hugh is being equalised by Marcus Clayton, who is responding. So suddenly, in the club class, outside of your leader, it is all looking as though right now all of your drivers in the club class are either gaining pace and then losing it, or vice versa. Could Martin Brandon spring a surprise? Could he go hunting after the podium right at the end? It is 7 seconds between him and Marcus Clayton, the final podium position holder. He's got past Hugh first, but 5 minutes to go. He's going to need to really get going if he wants to do this. He's going to need to find at least 2 seconds a lap from this point onwards. That may not be easy. I suspect, given our leaders, and there's one of them, and the others behind him, and meanwhile you do have a car they're going to put a lap on shortly as Simon Hunt at the bottom of your screen for Great Mass Motorsport. Given that our leaders are currently 5 minutes from the finish, and they're on lap 30, we are expecting a grand total of 32 laps here today. What a race it has been. We've seen some absolutely brilliant batting. We've also seen some interesting tweaks on strategy. We've seen quite a few drivers, in fact, have some very long pit stops, and others have very short pit stops by comparison. So a lot of data that we're going into the future race rounds. But as we do see our leaders trying to cool this one down, well, we take a look back very quickly to what happened to Robin Aston only moments ago. So this was Aston, chase starter Rachel Hugh at the time, coming through turn number 4, and just touched the apex curve a bit too much, and it unsettled the car, got the power down, and had to collect the car back together, and Martin Brandon just simply took the place off of Robin Aston there, and well, able to carry on at both drives, no doubt about it, as we head back to your live racing. As we do come on back, well, still more to come, and well, as we look back to your club leader now of Joshua Downing, and the Type 2 racing driver here, 3rd overall, looking very much comfortably set here for what would be the win. But, of course, he won't be counting that the win is in his hands until he sees that final finish line. That's all part of it. As Mikhail Salkuni trying to come back at him, 2 seconds behind. So right now, it is very much back and forth between these two. Although, that previous sector, Downing was a second slower. So that would have been the run from turn 7 in towards the exit of turn number 10. If so, is Downing having a bit of a problem with the car? Because that's not good news if you're losing a whole second. It's probably an innocent error, to be fair, but you can always read into things. You can always start to convince yourself something that's going on, particularly when the driver gets it wrong, as they go on to another lap. And down in that time, 52.420, Salkuni, a 51.875. That final sector from Salkuni, not quite matching up to Downing, so therefore Downing gets some time back, but Salkuni definitely progressing closer. And they've got 2 laps to go, as we understand it. Just double checking in with race control whether we are going to see this race called what will be a grand total of none other than 32 laps, and the answer is yep, we are seeing 32 laps in total, and so our mental mathematics was correct. Well, right now we are waiting to see if there's any last minute battles here at Motegi. Otherwise things are relatively calm and cooling down at the moment, but again, it can only take one small mistake and this race can reopen. Indeed, the gaps are not too large because Howarth only is 9/10 of a second ahead of Wenman for the lead overall and Premier in 3rd, and for the leader club it's only 1.5 seconds between Downing and Salkuni, and then we do see Peter Florian 17 seconds behind, but being closed up to very gradually by a variety of club drivers of Marcus Clayton, Rachel Hugh and Martin Brandon, with the trio all getting tastily close to each other. There you can see them all in the same camera shot for a brief moment. They're all getting very close here for 3rd place in club, which is currently held on to by the American Marcus Clayton. Maybe on the other side of the Pacific, but right now absolutely enjoying the racing here in Japan, no doubt about it. Further down the order, Ross Gillette has left Ben Wayne, and I think will be feeling very comfortable for 6th here in the club class. Although again, the fighting, I think you feel as our top 5 was on the cards, but it hasn't quite been that way. Now, as the drive's coming through, well, we are calling this race on 32 laps, ladies and gentlemen. We will not get a 33rd, even though they crossed onto what is the 32nd lap with an extra 2 seconds remaining based on the rate of knots they're travelling at. And, well, as they make the way in towards the left-hander, it's all going to be for now James Howarth, all about just keeping it together for one last tour here. And, well, the 154 driver right now, no, Barry Women's right there, but has the word gone through at Dexter's Motorsports not to fight anymore? Well, they've got the time to fight. They've got 22 seconds to Joshua Downing, so the theory would be they'll go for it if so. But Downing right now, maintaining that gap at 1.2 seconds to Salkuni. It is looking very precarious, that gap, to be fair. And, well, meanwhile, James Howarth and Barry Wemman getting closer and closer. Wemman here going on for one last charge. I mean, he saved it all up for one last hurrah. But the problem is right now, gets within half a second. Where do you go from there? You start to get that aero wash off the car in front, and that just makes gaining the next couple of attempts even more challenging than all the attempts you've gained up to this point. A little twitch there from Barry Wemman, and well, as he makes his way in towards the corner, of turn number 10, that little twitch coming through turn 7, 8 and 9, it may have just simply not worked out for him, but they make the way down towards turn 11, and however now only has, well, it's 4 quarters between him and the win. Joshua Downing meanwhile comes out of turn number 9, and you can see there Salkuni not close enough here to attack him at the moment, but as he comes in towards the hairpin here, Salkuni right now an ever-present threat to the end. But back to the front we go, and for James Howarth, 2 quarters remain, then it's 1, and then there were none as he makes his way out to the final quarter. For James Howarth, the checker flag awaits him, and it is going to be victory here in the pre-season event, ahead of his teammate for the sister team of Dexterous Motorsports, Magenta. It will be Barry Wenman, but it's Cyan ahead of Magenta, and Joshua Downing right now has got just 3 more quarters of his own. Makes his way through turn number 12 for Type 2 Racing, then into 13, then into 14 as he makes his way on out. Well, for the English driver, he's going to start off his pre-season in winning ways, taking the winning club by a grand total of 9 tenths ahead of Mikhail Salkuni, and Salkuni run up in club. Peter Florian Mill's got a bit of time to go, but before he gets there, we do say well done to Gavin Corby for coming home in 14th place, just behind Simon Hunt off camera. But here comes Peter Florian as he makes way through, and the prior to them, the 147 takes 5th place, 3rd in the Premier class. And then we've got a little bit more time before we do get to Marcus Clayton, who comes over the hill, and we'll see 3rd place in club, 6th overall. He's happy with that for Verano Esports, with Rachel Hugh holding on to 4th class at 7th overall, just ahead of a late charging Martin Brandon. There'll be Robin Aston in 9th place, just ahead of Connor Pink, who will be coming home shortly, because behind that is Ross Wheatley there, Sans front bumper. Well, that McLaren's definitely been for the wars today. But here's Connor Pink, and after being elbowed around earlier on, well, in the end, he's definitely turned this around to a successful end, taking 10th place, 5th in Premier. There'll be Ross Gillette there, and coming home the privateer in 11th place ahead of Ben Wayne for 5M Racing. And, well, he'll be your last finisher on the lead lap, ladies and gentlemen, with Simon Hunt and Gavin Corby, the other finishers, a lap down. But as James Howarth and Barry Wenman go around in formation with Wenman, they're getting ahead. A bit of a cheeky, I think, to say, I could have passed you, had a bit more time. Well, as they say, you've got 60 minutes to try and win the race plus the final lap. And James Howarth doing it within the allotted time and the number of laps. And a brilliant job at that. And Joshua Downing, well, it may have been a bit elbows out at the start of the race. And a bit of a bold move into turn number 3. But to be fair, in the end, getting it done. But Mikhail Salkuni undercutting him by 8 seconds in the pit lane, almost stealing away the win. And, well, what a closest on pace those two have got. It'll be very interesting when we do go into the points paying races as of Watkins Glen in 24 hours time. But as all our drives cool and calming down to the pit lane, well, let's take a look at those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, ladies and gentlemen. And here they are, starting with the overall results, of course, for this pre-season event for Split B's Season 13 of the SimRacing International Thursday GT3 Championship, brought to you on iRacing. And here today from the Mobility Resort Motegi. And, well, we got to see that James Howarth in the end taking victory in Japan for Dexterous Motorsports Cyan by 6 tenths ahead of the sister team Magenta's Barry Wenman. But the two of them in so close, and Howarth thought he'd done very well to save fuel and have a short pit stop, and Wenman undercut him by the best part of 4 seconds end to end in the pit lane. Joshua Downing and taking 3rd place there overall, and with the club win for Type 2 Racing by what's 9 tenths ahead of Mikhail Salkuni for Rhino Esports. And, well, we got to see an absolutely brilliant drive in the first stint for Downing, and he needed that in the end to open up enough of a gap to Salkuni, who undercut him on strategy, but it just wasn't enough. From the Italian, it was then a further 16 seconds to Peter Florian, with the privateer there and coming home in at 5th place. And, well, still a solid drive early on, keeping Wenman honest and Howarth as well, but the pace seemed to slip away from him, as did the strategy, with him having one of the longer pit stops to the field. And we did see Marcus Clayton completing up the club podium there in 6th place for Verano Esport ahead of Rachel Hugh. The Blue Sky Esports driver taking home 7th place ahead of Martin Brandon, who completed your club top 5 for Axis Sim Sports. And then we did have Robin Aston for 5M Racing ahead of Connor Pink to complete your top 10. Aston just found his way ahead of Pink right in the closing stages, but understanding Pink in turn ahead of Gillette by what was 6 seconds, and Ross Gillette there best of the rest ahead of 5M Racing's Ben Wayne. Had a bit of a frustrating race, although to be fair, got it home in the end, and he was your last lead that finisher. Simon Hunt a lap down there for Great MS Motorsport, as was Gavin Corby, and your last finish of the race behind the Gavbacks for Racing Lamborghini was Ross Wheatley there for DC Motorsport. Then, retiring from the race with 6 laps to go, it was Danny Weir for Dexterous Motorsport Cyan. We didn't quite see what happened to him, but we did see a bumper in the middle of the road for Ross Wheatley, and we do wonder whether the two of them had a bit of an introduction to each other. But either way, Danny Weir not seeing the checker flag, but classified as a finisher, as will Scott Kostrich be, given the fact he did complete sufficient race distance. Behind the GPX SimSport driver, sadly it was a non-finishers classified for Eddie Theobald, and also for Peter Armstrong and Rob Mackay. But as we come to the individual class finishing positions, ladies and gentlemen, because in reality, this will be where the points are made and paid when the season truly gets underway at Watkins Glen. Starting with Premier, James Howarth taking the win for Dexterous Motorsports Siam by 6 attempts over Barry Wenman, and then we did see Peter Florian completing that top 3. Robin Aston took 4th ahead of Connor Pink, and then we did a lap down to Ross Wheatley, and then 10 laps down to Scott Kostrich for GPX SimSport behind the DC Motorsport driver, but ahead of the non-finishers of Eddie Theobald and Rob Mackay. And as for your club class, well, it was a win just about for Joshua Danning for Type 2 racing. Almost lost it on the strategy, but kept it together on the road when he needed to do so. And it was 9 tenths between him and Verano Esports' Mikael Salcuni. It was a double podium for Verano Esport, with Marcus Clayton fighting his way forward in the end to bring on home that 3rd place spot on the podium. Brilliant drive from both of them. And Rachel Hugh 4th there for Blue Sky Esports. On a different day, she may have been able to take the podium. She did show a lot of fighting potential of the race in that Corvette. And I suspect if Hugh's bringing the Corvette, she will be one to watch as the season goes on. Martin Brandon took 5th place there for Axis SimSport, looking quick in the late stage, and the Ferrari unlocked some pace in the final 20 minutes. And if he can find that pace of the whole race distance, what could he do is a big question. With Ross Gillett there in 6th place, the priority ahead of Ben Wayne for 5M Racing. It was then a lap down to Simon Hunt ahead of Gavin Corby, and then 6 laps down as he retired to the pit lane for Danny Weir, and the Dexterous Motorsport Sandra, followed up by the Ghost Squadron Motorsport car of Peter Armstrong, classified as a non-finisher, the sole non-finisher of the club class. But what a race, ladies and gentlemen, no doubt about it. Plenty of excitement here at Motegi, and well, our drivers who made the journey definitely showing A, what the circuit's got to offer, but also B, that we have got a glimpse of how good the season ahead's going to be for season 13 of Split B, well, Premier and Club classes. But with that, sadly, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now, hotly anticipating the start of the points-paying part of the season for the Thursday GT3 Championship, but also thinking, this looks absolutely brilliant. How do I get on the grid? Well, we should point out that all the spots on the grid have been sold out. They were sold out literally, I think, the best part of 72 hours after the signups were opened formally. However, do not be upset by that, because firstly, we've got multiple series you see on screen here, plus also we do have reserve lists. So if you do want to be part of the SimRacing International community, if you do want to go racing with us, do join the official Discord. Invite link at the bottom of your screen. That's step 1. And then step 2, take your pick from the selection of championships that we have available here. Starting from left and reading to the right, we have our Thursday evening GT3 Championship, which we've been bringing the pre-season event of Split B for today, and that goes formally in anger into racing as of tomorrow on the 2nd of July. Alternatively, if you're a bit more of a weekend racer and you love your GT3s, we do have an all-new season of the UK SimRacing Sunday Showdown, Season 19, due to get underway this coming weekend from Bathurst, and we'd love to see you part of that grid. Or if you like GT racing, but you want a little bit more risk, perhaps you're not a big fan of ABS, well, don't worry, we've got you covered, because we've got the old 2023 GT machines in our GT Championship Season 3, and they're due to get underway racing on Friday evenings every 2 weeks come at the end of this month, where we have up to the length of the races, and therefore made it an endurance racing championship. We also do have our all-new Transatlantic Trophy, the first season which is due to get underway within the coming weeks, dedicated to racing GT4 McLarens and GT3 McLarens, and indeed all part of a Motorsport UK Esports approved championship package, and indeed some huge prizes available there. And indeed, if you and a team are looking to go onto the grid for a championship which you won't to forget, do make your way onto the grid for the Transatlantic Trophy. Plenty of spots available still, and he would love to see you there. But if you're looking for something far more casual, perhaps you're not looking to pay to enter at this time to any of our championships, and you just want to get yourself up to speed with the league racing format, of course, we do have our free races per week in our practice league that runs on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. So there's never been a better time to get on the grid here at SimRacing International, and we'd love to see you a big part of it. But with that, we also must give a big shout out to our series and league sponsors, who do include Carmate, Modern Technology, the GP2 Group, and lastly, we need to give a big shout out to Motorsport UK's esports division for recognising us as a recommended community. We're very grateful for that recognition, and long may it continue throughout 2026 here at SimRacing International. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, the appetite has been consumed, and next up on the menu is round number 1. And well, the good news is you don't have to wait too long, because as of this broadcast premiering, we only got 24 hours, in fact less than that, because on Thursday, the 2nd of July, we'll be live from circuit side to bring you all the racing action as it unfolds, as we unveil and raise the calendar on an all-new formal season of racing in Season 13 of the Thursday GT3 Championship, and it is the mecca of road racing in the USA of Watkins Glen International, where it all begins. Tune in a day's time to see how all starts in Split B or Split A. Both broadcasts will be live from circuit side throughout the whole of the season, and we look forward to seeing what goes down in the US state of New York. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we've been SimRacing International, and I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.